as is. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, my name is Ann Sermon, and I just wanted to speak to, all right, this needs to come up. How do we do that? Sorry about that. Yeah, that's good. Okay, sorry about that. Everybody hear me all right? Also, full disclosure, I am the other member of this board that is not in favor of this warrant article. I was not in favor of it even going on the ballot. But a couple things just to take a few steps back on how it got here. And first of all, the master plan is a vision for how we want to see this town. And it is an absolute guide to how we want to plan the town. And there's a whole section there on recreation, to which I agree with. And I absolutely agree that we need to update the rec department, the fields, the whole section there. In fact, Planet Playground was the absolute priority about 3 years ago when this whole thing started. We were told that that had to be updated. It was very outdated. I agreed with that, and I actually thought that's where they would start when they came back to all of us. But it was $250,000 at the time to do that. It's doubled in price due to the ADA, et cetera. But the part that I want to get into a little bit is also the process. This did not get to the Budget Recommendations Committee until their very last meeting. And I don't want to minimize that. This rec department staff has done a fabulous job of putting together all the information that you see here tonight. I take none of that away. And I know they worked hard. But it's almost like they did it all right until the very end, where you needed to get that scrutiny, that oversight by that Budget Recommendations Committee, because we put a lot of stock in what they tell us. And they admitted, the chair of that committee came right to the select board and said, we got this at the 11th hour. We really didn't vet this. We're going to turn it over to you. So, okay, you know, we got big shoulders, we took it on, but it's important that everybody know that it didn't get the vetting that it should have gotten. And had it gotten some of that vetting, some of the things that people have issues with today might not have presented themselves. So I use that as a guidepost or a teachable moment, so to speak, for big projects. You can't do all the good work and then have the key area skipped, because that's why you've got a lot of people that are opposed to this project, including me. Because it's also, the scope has completely almost doubled from the 7.1 that it started with several years ago. The next thing I wanted to talk about was someone already talked about fees, which was very important. What are these things going to cost? We need to get into that as well. But also, if the town were a developer, a regular developer, there would be steps that they would have to follow. There would be a technical review, there would be planning board review, there'd be zoning board review, and guess what? There'd have been a butter notification way back in the beginning of this process. That is just key. Any good developer, frankly, goes around to the abutters long before any of it even hits the official process. These are the smart ones I've known. They literally go around and they go door to door and they say, guess what, here's what's going on. And there's going to be meetings, there's going to be all kinds of things going on. So please tell me your problems now. Tell me what you're going to object to now, so I will be fully prepared to go into those meetings and address your issues and update my plan, whatever it takes. All of that missed on this, and that's why you have a lot of upset people in this room today. And it also leads me into the amendment that was done by one of my select board members to take out the parking lot by Wayside Drive. Now let's take a step back. Parking was the key issue, if not it was one of the top 3 issues with the rec department. Parking. Okay, so at the last second we're going to hack out the parking lot? Come on. I mean, that just seemed a little disingenuous to me. I thought you're taking out half the whole thing that people needed, that people asked for. So, yes, it cut the price down a little bit, but the wording of the article is the same. So there's no guarantee that this plan, the way you see it today, is exactly what's going to happen, even if it does get on the ballot and it does pass. So a parking lot could be put someplace, who's to say? And I don't say that as any kind of tactic, I just say that's a fact. We've seen plenty of plans that come to this town, and they look one way when they start, and they look a little different when they end. And it could be all done correctly, it's just things do change. Things change, you get into a project, you've got all kinds of things that go on with the land. We all know this, anyone that's involved in development. I did not mean to go on and on. I do have a couple of questions, and it's in regard to the land swap, because I'm very interested in that. I want to understand that if, let's say we build the building, well, two things. I don't know if Meals on Wheels could actually be there, but if you build the building and you say, okay, we're going to get you this other piece of land, what's the time frame on that? In other words, I don't want us to have built something, then all of a sudden we're under some kind of penalty or executive order saying, if you don't get us a nice piece of land, to make up for this, now we're in a problem. I mean, I just want to make sure that we're not set up to some kind of liability, or what exactly is the time frame? What comes first? Do we find a piece of land to swap before we do the project? Again, I am giving folks just information that I don't have the answers to. So I could not in good conscience support this project the way it is written. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brandon Reno. I live at 6 Wayside Drive. I want to thank the Rec Department for all the hard work that they've done putting this plan together.
Hold on, sir. Stand up, please, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Bisson?
Sure.
In speaking with the state of New Hampshire, Eric Feldbaum at the state, negotiations for a land swap would not start until this is passed. He doesn't want to switch out land that will never be used. As for Meals on Wheels being in the building, once a land swap, we can put anyone in the building we would like. But time frame, approximately 3 months, which fits into our timeline, where immediately if this would pass, we would work with the, identify the property that we would do the land swap with. The state of New Hampshire would review it, and the feds, and it's a bunch of paperwork.
Ms. Gorson, what's the question, Ms. Gorson?
He still hasn't answered the question. I want to know what land.
What land?
What land is it?
Well, we're looking at several pieces of property, so I can't pinpoint one.
Private land that you buy? Is it
No, it could be town-owned land, it could be a developer that needs to set aside land for recreational use, as in building, it could be a number of different ones, so there's not one specific one. It's ultimately up to the feds what they would like for the land swap.
If you have questions, please get in line and come to the microphone, sir. Please come down to the microphone.
No, it would be a piece of town land that could be adjacent to one of the parks, could be turned into recreational opportunities. So it can be a town piece of land, but it can be
Mr.
a private
Zinkus.
one, so.
I just had a question.
Well, you gotta listen to me.
Yeah, but don't stand behind them like that. Just, if you have a question, go ahead. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have left some time for that answer to be made. Again, my name is Brandon Reno. I live at 6 Wayside Drive. I appreciate all the hard work the Rec Department has done. I appreciate the Select Board taking into consideration our concerns with the parking lot off of our neighborhood and the adverse effect to our daily lives. And I hope that they stay true to their word in removing that parking lot for good. I've heard this topic come up a few times. Two things. A lot of people seem to be concerned with parking and also concerned with traffic. I think there's a relatively reasonable solution to alleviate some of those concerns. I think that this project should take into consideration a traffic study on Hampton Road as part of the project before anything goes forward, to determine the appropriate number of lanes and storage lanes for turning and to alleviate some traffic concerns. Also, on top of that, the proximity of this rec field is very close to a lot of neighborhoods, not only my own, but also the Exeter Farms neighborhood just off of Guinea Road. Providing a sidewalk on Hampton Road will allow for a lot of people to access this park that would no longer have to drive to the park facility, and that would alleviate some of the traffic concerns and also the parking concerns. So I really encourage the town to take that into consideration and provide a relatively inexpensive sidewalk on Hampton Road, as it already exists west of this project, from downtown all the way out to the rec facility. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Hi, Donna Slaughter, 61 Acadia Lane. I think everybody has already stated a lot of the things and concerns, and my big concern was traffic, and I don't think it's going to get any better with now parking being taken out. More people are going to be parking across the street as they are now, and I don't think that that problem's been solved. And I'm a senior, and yes, I can walk there, but all of our other seniors now, most are going to have to drive there, and I don't think that they're going to be able to find parking. And I think people are going to say, well, I'm not going down there, it's too busy, I can never find a parking spot. I think that this is too large a project for the area. 2,200 dump trucks are going to have to bring in fill for this site. And all of the trees will be cut down, therefore 101, all of that smog in the summertime when all of these kids are there, are now going to be breathing that. So I'm not against it. I've lived here since 2004. I moved a mile to Acadia Lane, and there was no scope of this type of a project going in there. So I want to thank Parks and Recs, but I think the cart is before the horse on this project. Thank you.
Who's got that? Who's saying?
There are folks in the room that may not understand if they want to vote on the warrant articles, they have to register back here.
I've announced that 5 or 6 times.
All set?
Yep.
All right. Good morning. Oh, my goodness, I'm loud. I know my husband tells me I'm loud, so I'll try and back off. My name is Stephanie Papakostendis, and I am actually the chair of the Parks Recreation Committee. I've been the chair since the committee was put together, but I've been intimately involved with this rec renovation project for 4 years now. 4 years. We've gone through 16 different renovations of this project. We've trimmed fat, trimmed fat, trimmed fat. We are down to muscle and fascia, and that's it right now. I've heard a number of times people saying that, you know, this is a lavish, luxurious project. Maybe at one point it was, and we took a look and we said, what do we need in this town? And we shaved this down as far as it could be shaved down to get to where we are today. I wanted to address what we used as our roadmap and our Bible to come up with this project. What we used was the 2015 Townwide Facilities Plan. The reason why we use that plan is Mr. Zinka referenced that the 2020 plan was unbiased. Well, the 2020 plan that's out there right now was put together by 5 voters that did a wonderful job coming together, but they're fully invested, they're taxpayers, they're voters in the town. So to say that it's an unbiased plan, when you come to the table and you put a plan together, if your dollars are incorporated in that, your mindset's going to be there the whole entire time as to whether you want to put this through or recommend it or not. The 2015 Town of Exeter Facilities Plan was actually put together by an unbiased group, the Turner Group, not an Exeter resident, wasn't individuals who were financially invested in what the project would bring to them in their 4 walls of their home as well. And I'd like to just draw your attention to the components that we followed to a T to come up with this project. In this 2015 Facilities Recommendation Project, or Facilities Plan, these were the components that were mentioned in there. And remember, this is 5 years ago, so we've got 5 more years of wear and tear on what they've already gone through and looked at and assessed as needing to be changed. Lack of gym space to accommodate recreation programs, lack of a fully handicap accessible building, severely inadequate sports equipment storage, groundkeeping equipment storage, currently temporary, not secure and inadequate, lack of a serving kitchen, antiquated playground, upgrades are required, lack of adequate parking, needs for central administration building, central storage, and indoor multipurpose space, expanded field space, and accessible swimming pool. Again, this was 2015. So take this plan right now and add 5 more years of wear and tear and issues on what we already had 5 years ago, and tell me how the 2020 plan came back and said, we don't need these things right now. I'm baffled by that. What I'd like to actually touch base on is that over the last year specifically, I've had the opportunity to sit down and meet with a number of our seniors in the community, with a number of our families in the community, and that has been one of the most wonderful things to be able to do, to understand what we need and what we're lacking in our community. The key word here, folks, is community. I talked to some young middle-class families. They're looking for amenities. They don't have a problem paying a bit of a higher tax for them. Was for something tangible. We need water, we need sewer, but it's time that we have something tangible that we actually pay for in our taxes that we can look at and say, you know what? I paid for this. This is mine, this is ours. We actually paid for this. It went in our taxes, but we have something to hold on to. What I want to go is just hit a few quotes, and then I will leave you to the rest of the comments because I know we have a lot. Seniors have responded to me directly. Most of us have given selflessly to make this town what it is today, and now when it's time for the community to give back to us, everyone's pushing back. We feel like we don't matter anymore, and those who can afford the Y are the only ones who are able to be thought about. One moment. From a mother. My kids have nowhere affordable to go after school. This rec project is the only necessary for the town, but necessary to help young families have a safe, affordable place to go after school in the summer and on weekends. I can't tell you how many times my kids come home from camp with heat exhaustion. They're being hydrated properly there, but they need some place to go to keep cool. These are all the quotes that we've heard from the town. I've heard a number of times that the Y is a solution. I love the Y. I'm an instructor at the Y. I am very pro-Y. However, it's not a choice between the Y and the rec building. We should be complementing each other. For those that have silver sneakers for seniors that get access to the Y, fantastic, I'm so happy for them. But we shouldn't turn our backs on those that don't have silver sneakers, and we should give them a way to get well and be healthy and be able to have a place to go. Same for our children, for our families that can't pay $68 a month. We need to give them a place that they can be able to go and not say, you know what, you can't afford the Y, you don't get anything. That's not how a community works. As far as the sustainability comments, I'm so happy that those were brought up because this was such a focus that we had on this project. And Ms. Flockhart, I'm so happy that you came up because you are my tree guru in the town, and I know that you have such a depth of knowledge when it comes to sustainability. So to hear that you want to work with us and make sure that we're doing things the right way, I'm so glad because we want to work with you to make sure things are being done the right way. I'm very disappointed that with all of the talk of what was being eliminated from the park from a sustainability standpoint, nothing was mentioned about all of the mature trees that we're going to be adding to this project. And the additional entire page of sustainability, how we are set up for 600 solar panels on this building, low flow toilets, LED lights, high efficiency boilers, tight building envelope, dehumidification process in the gym rather than using air conditioner. So what I want to leave you with today is that for the people that said this project wasn't well thought out, it was extremely well thought out. We have taken all of the fat off of this project and we are down to straight up muscle for this project. For those who that have brought up that we're not being fiscally conservative or fiscally responsible, the fiscally responsible thing would have been to approve this 2 years ago because building costs have gone up 24% every single year. But I'm glad we didn't approve it 2 years ago because it wasn't the right project for this town. This is the right project for this community in this town. And we need to be fiscally responsible and approve it now before we move forward next year. We add 24% and then 10 years down the line, we're at $20 million for a project that we could have done for $10.8 million and taken care of our community. The last thing I'm going to say is that we are a community. I grew up in a family where we took care of people who maybe didn't have the resources to push forward. Some of us in here may not have the full resources, some of us may. For those of us that have the resources, I really am imploring you to look outside the four walls of your home and say, I can join the Y, my family can do this, my family can do that. I'm begging you as a community to look outside your home, look at our community, and look at the people that can't afford to go and join a gym or pay the extra money to go and join a travel team. I'm asking you to be a community, and I'm asking you to vote yes on this project to move it forward so that we can be a community, multi-generational community. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kim Shute, 7 Squire Way. I've been a resident since 2012. I'm a mother of 5. We have utilized services from the rec group, from toddler programs with Music Together, summer camp every year, sports at every age. I appreciate the rec department and all the work you've put into this project, accommodating concerns from the community, certainly climate concerns, which I think are very important. I appreciate setting up for solar panels. I think that's all fantastic. I really just want to speak in support of this project. My kids have attended summer camp. The lack of shelter with weather has been a concern every summer. Beyond just being a family of 7 in this community and the needs of my family with my kids aged 6 to 16, I work as a physician assistant in a heart surgery program nearby, and I wanted to speak to how that may impact community members who may have undergone procedures in my community. When I have a patient who's gone through open heart surgery or some other type of surgery and they return to a community like ours in weather like this or in the dead of the summer, and they may not be able to afford the Y, and they have community services like what's being represented, it is of ultimate value. For them to be able to go and walk in a climate-controlled area after recovering from major surgery is a huge impact to their recovery. Being homebound while recovering for a month and being isolated has a huge impact on their lifestyle. So beyond just what my patients may, anyone who recovers from any type of an injury like this could benefit from this type. We have an increasing senior population. We're continuously building more facilities and more housing for seniors in this community, and I think that this project and what it offers to all ages, particularly our seniors, I think has a huge impact. There have been a lot of studies in medicine to show that lack of community services facilitates loneliness, which increases mental health issues, which has a huge impact on physical health, and lack of accessibility to climate-controlled walking has a huge impact on mental and physical health. So I fully support this project. I'm certainly willing to pay my share of the taxes to support it. I realize there may be some logistical things. I think that there's been tremendous work in altering the scope. I appreciate adding mature trees and the environmental aspects of it, but I urge you to vote in support of this project for the community. I think it just adds tremendous value, and it will have my vote. Thank you.
My name is Mark Maglin. I live at 14 Little Pine Lane, and I've been a resident for about 10 years. I am not loaded with any facts about this project. What I'm looking at is the map of the project. And I have 3 children that use this facility. I've been there for soccer, baseball, the pool, the playground, and what strikes me when I go there is it's the foliage. It's small. It's has a lot to offer for old people. I see when I go to a game, I see grandparents, parents, little kids running around, and I hear people talk about all the benefits of the project. And I agree with just about everything. But I feel that we're trying to pack. If we're going to spend $1 million or $10 million, we need to get this in there. Well, if we're going to do this, we need to get this in there. Look at the space. Look at how much extra room is left in this parcel of land. This is an outstanding job done by people who are given, this is the land we need to fit everything into. I don't think they could have done a better job. When I drive by this area, which I do every day, over the last 10 years, I take note of the volume of traffic as it has increased just in the 10 years I've been here. This rec area is very valuable to my family, but I feel that we're adding a component into this space that will change it forever. Not only traffic, it gobbles up every piece of land in this area. It knocks down part of what makes it quaint as a rec area. You know, we can put a walking area around this where people can actually breathe fresh air and enjoy kids running around, and there's a lot of value in this. I just feel that this extra building in this space is, we're trying to fit triangles, rounds, squares into this very limited parcel of land. And the impact, when I heard about this at first, I thought, wow, that's great. They're going to make the fields a little better. They're going to do a new playground. They're going to increase the parking, which is all critical because we can literally walk to this place if we wanted to. And the danger, the daddy signals, the spider senses go off when I want to send my kids over there. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't feel safe sending my kids walking over there because of the traffic and the amount of distractions that are currently there now. You pack in another big project, and an excellent project for seniors. My dad's elderly. He did the Wheels on Meals. I know the value of that. I just think that we're packing too much into this one space. We're going to have a downtown feel. It's going to be so congested, not just for the people that are within the square half a mile of it, but it's just going to, in my humble opinion, it's going to be, we're going to look back and say, we tried to pack too much into this. We're not even addressing one of my favorite topics, which is the pool. We talk about this is good for the seniors, that's good for the seniors. There's nothing better than aqua therapy. We got an antiquated pool house. I was all excited. I thought, wow, they're gonna bring in something like they have at Dover. We drive to Dover to use their pool because they walk in. Seniors, kids. You can walk for therapy in aqua. None of that. Our pool's, I don't know how old it is, but it's freezing. And it's, you use it for 2 months. And our kids, they'll dive into 50-degree water and be like, hey, we're having fun. But, when the lips turn blue, it's time to get them out. So for me, I know this is a project that's gone a long time. These people have worked so hard, but I think it feels from a layperson's standpoint, from a person that sees every day driving by the wreck, what the volume of traffic looks like now, what it looks like on a weekend when I bring my kids over there now. Okay, forget about the parking, just the pure volume, people coming in and out, the distractions. Now you take a whatever square foot building, bring a whole nother big important element back into this little space, knock down trees to make it all fit into this little parcel of land. I think it's too much. That's my humble opinion. I want to thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Sullivan. I live at 44 Hampton Falls Road. And I moved here in 2013 with my 4 kids. My kids actually go to the wreck. And I apologize for my attire. I'm about to go for a run after this in this gorgeous town we all come home, that I pay 5 figures in taxes to live in. And yet, my kids actually participated in rec programs. And my kids actually called me in the middle of their bathroom during a thunderstorm, scared out of their minds, because that's where they have to go when it rains, right? I've had to stay outside in 0-degree weather to sign my kids up for the rec in February with a whole gaggle of other parents who are so excited to be crammed into the second floor of their antiquated BS building that they're stuck in because we just think that's okay. No thanks. So we have to do something. The rec deserves better. My kids deserve better. We are only going to grow. And I still lament the loss of trees and the amazing amounts of dump trucks. I remember building the condos that were abutting, that we're all concerned about, and have no solar panels on those buildings. But I am tired about the situation where I pay a lot of money to live in this town that I love, that has an Exeter program, a recreational program, that frankly feels woefully inadequate for the population that it tries to serve. And we deserve, those folks with kids deserve a lot better than what we've got.
Jerry Hamill, 17 Little Pine Lane in Exeter. I watched the Selectmen's meeting when they had a couple weeks ago when they were discussing this whole thing about the Parks and Rec, and there's no question that something is needed. It's been talked about since 2014. I remember Mike Favreau presenting it to the town. And then when he did, there's no question. I mean, the build is antiquated, but it's not the only place in town that has that problem. I'm sure Chief Como would just love to have a new substation. I'm sure that we'd like to have a new public works building. There's a lot of things that this town need, and we need infrastructure. We've got other projects going on in this town that are going to be coming up for vote in the next year. We're doing over $50 million treatment plant right now that we needed. So when you start looking at everything that's going on this year, it's going to affect our taxes. There's probably a lot in this room who've seen a big increase this year. I know I had a $750 increase, and that's without the water bill that's doubled in the last couple of years. And that doesn't preclude the need for this building. We do need it. But I just think that with all the good work that these people have done, we still have to look a little bit further. Ironically, you look at the design of this building, and I'm just amazed that when you look at the Genesis building, which is right in front of the playing field, it makes me think, what's the plan of Genesis in the future? Are they going to stay there? Or is this something that the town could buy that building to get in and solve the parking problems, the building problems, and renovate that? When you talk due diligence goes a long ways in looking at multiple things. Now, I'm a contractor, I'm a builder, I've developed land in this town. I guess no one's told me about I should be increasing my cost 24% a year, because that would have been very nice. But I just think that we're going on an upslide that we're going to come down again. And when we come down, the prices are going to stabilize. I look at bringing in this much fill to build a big building like that is not feasible. And what we're going to do is we are setting ourselves up for a problem. As far as the problem with the rain, you know, I've watched my granddaughter go there, and I know she had to be bused over to the other schools. There are things that we could do. There was at one time they were going to put a big bubble over the pool to use in the wintertime. There are things that we could accommodate for a lot less money. We could accommodate a safe place for kids to be in the storm. And my thing is, does this main building have to be there? Can we accommodate those kids and put those buildings in another place? And I think it needs a little more exploration. And I think my big thing is, you know, not to negate the work that these people have done, because it's a hard job, but I also look at the job that the facilities management group have done too. They didn't recommend it right now because there's other things that are a priority. Now, I think this could be the same thing as the other night at the selectmen's meeting, where people can get up and we can talk about this. It's going to come down to a vote. We're either going to put it on the ballot or we're going to change that. So with that in mind, I don't want to take away anybody's ability to speak, but I would like to make an amendment to this article. And Mr. Moderator, if it's premature to do that, I will do that to you.
You can do it at any time.
Well, then I would like to make an amendment to this article. And I would like it to state, to see if the town will vote to continue a study for the design and construction of a building, playground, and field improvements of the recreation park. Study to include other locations as well as the Hampton Road site. Strong consideration would be given to all abutters, which would include meetings and input prior to presentation to town.
You've heard the amendment. Is there a second? Before we discuss this, Mr. Hamill, where in Article 5 do you want this?
I'd actually like
Article 4, where do you want
I would
it?
like to actually replace the article that it's the first part is the same as the article. And it's basically not changing the intent, it's bringing in the design features, it's eliminating the money to actually further study to see if we've got other things that we could do.
No, help me out here. Where do you want this to put in? And to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,850,000 there?
No, I just want to eliminate the rest of the article. This would be the new article. And basically, it starts off the same, it starts the same as the other article, but just eliminates all the financial portion.
Wants to eliminate the whole... Is that possible? You can't do that. Doesn't that take away the... Yeah.
It's not a question about the intent. It's the only prohibition is on eliminating the subject matter. The subject matter, I think the court would say the subject matter is what happens with the recreation. Yeah, he's trying to wipe out all that, right? Yeah. Yeah. I think the body can do that. Okay. I think the court would say that the subject matter is what happens with the recreation.
Okay, that was town council I was just speaking with. So, pretty much you are eliminating Article 4 as it's written.
I am eliminating the dollar amount and building the buildings.
So,
but to continue the study for that.
To see if the town The only part of this amendment, the warrant article that's staying, as far as your amendment is concerned, is after the words "to see if the town will vote." After that, it's all changed.
No, I've got the parts about the buildings and the recreation, playground.
You wrote to see if the town will vote to continue a study for the design and construction of a building, playground, field improvements of the recreation park. The study to include other locations as well as the Hampton Road site. Strong consideration would be given to all abutters, which would involve meeting and input prior to presentation of the town. Walter.
We're working on it, so we're trying to get... Okay. Now, and I think that would be this one go ahead. So he's saying take out all just
all the money languages. He's saying see if the town and then we'll vote to consider a study, which would so it eliminate that. To design construction of the building, playground field, improvements to the recreation park.
I know. Sit down.
That's what you're saying.
right, but it's still
under the intent.
It's still under the supplement, which is what we do with recreation. Recreation park.
Okay. All right. Speaking with advice of counsel, the new article will read, to see if the town will vote and raise, see if the town will vote to continue a study for the design and construction of a building, playground, and field improvements of the recreation park, period. Study to include other locations as well as the Hampton Road site, period. Strong consideration would be given to all abutters, which would include meeting and input prior to presentation to the town, period. That's the new article that Mr. Hamill has given, and it's been seconded.
Okay. If the amendment is approved.
Right. Yeah, that would go if the amendment is approved. Now we're going to talk to this amendment, not the original article. So if you're coming up to talk about Article 4 as it's presented, you have to wait until we finish with the amendment. Is there discussion about Mr. Hamill's amendment? Article 4, Mr. Hamill's amendment is basically, the whole article is now to read, to see if the town will vote to continue a study for the design and construction of a building, playground and field improvements of the recreation park, period. Study to include other locations as well as the Hampton Road site, period. Strong consideration would be given to all abutters, which would include meeting and input prior to presentation to town, period. That will be the new Article 4. Go away, Doc.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Anthony Zwan, 7 Marlborough Street, speaking to the amendment.
Thank you.
And specifically, I'm undecided on the original article, but I am firmly against this amendment. I can't recall a time in the 23 years I've been attending these town meetings that I've seen a change in intent of this magnitude on an article that is as important to this town as this one is. So I'm appalled by that. And so that's number one. Number two, I don't hear a dollar amount attached to this amendment. Number three, it seems that Mr. Hamill just got free legal advice from the town council, and I'm somewhat puzzled by the actual wording of Mr. Hamill's proposed amendment, and then the grammatical interpretation by the moderator and the town council. So I would just caution everybody about approving this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swan.
Good morning, Paul Royal, 3 Pumpkin Circle, Exeter, New Hampshire. I'm a little surprised that this amendment to the article is...
Well, control, you have somebody talking here.
I want to have the moderator's complete attention.
Hey, Paul, hold on a second, would you?
Yes.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
You want to tell him?
Sure. The moderator has asked me to respond to the previous speaker. I don't give advice to particular citizens. In fact, I've never spoken to the gentleman who was the one before. I give advice to the moderator, and the moderator asked me whether this amendment is allowed. The rules for amending an article are quite broad. The statute merely says, it doesn't say anything about the intent. In fact, there have been Supreme Court cases saying the legislation does not limit the changing of the intent. Instead, it merely says that the subject cannot be eliminated. The subject in this case is broadly interpreted by the courts, and I believe that the subject, what a court would say is that the subject of the original Article 4 is what happens with our recreation program and this particular park. That subject has not been eliminated by this amendment. The intent certainly is dramatically changed, but the courts have interpreted this statute to say that intent doesn't have anything to do with this. It is merely that broad term subject and not being totally eliminated. Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you. You've partially addressed the comments that I was going to make, so I'm going to leave you with this. Again.
He did.
Paul Royal, 3 Pumpkin Circle, Exeter, New Hampshire. One of your neighbors. So you've partially addressed this. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, but I disagree because it seems to me like not only the intent, but the article itself addresses the funding and building, period, of a new rec facility. This changes that to, let's have a study and not fund it. I don't get it. I'm just very surprised. Thank you.
Yep.
Make a motion to move the question on the amendment.
You can make that, but everybody in line will still be allowed to speak. What's your name, sir, please? Good.
Okay. Mary Beth Myers, 25 Brentwood Road. My question is about the maintenance costs. So I appreciate everything that Parks and Rec has done, and I agree that we need a facility. Even with the proposed amendment,
Who's making the point of order?
so
So I just, we're still talking about the amendment.
We're still talking
Right.
to the amendment.
Right, okay, so for the amendment, that the amendment include the cost to maintain a new facility. I didn't see any reference to that in the original, and I think we need to bear that in mind as we're looking to the future.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer Clark, 61 Acadia. I have a lot to say, but I'll only speak to the amendment right now. I'm in favor of the amendment because of all the things that many people have mentioned. And I do think that other properties should be considered at this point because of the fact that we are trying to stick a square peg in a round hole. And I believe that everybody in this town wants this project to go forward, just not at this location because it's such a poor building site. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm getting back in line. Thank you.
Eric Kane, Holly Court in Exeter. I speak against the amendment. One of the criticisms we heard this morning over and over again was that the project put forth was kind of thrown together at the last minute, and and there are many valid reasons to vote against the project in March. But the amendment sounds like it was thrown together in the last 15 minutes, and it needed to be stitched together by town council and the moderator. The project itself should stand or fall on its merits, not by being erased from the warrant. So I would urge people to vote against the amendment. Thanks.
Anyone else speaking to the amendment? Seeing none, I usually ask for a voice vote, but there are people here I know that are not registered voters. They haven't been in town long enough, so I'm going to ask for a hand vote rather than a voice vote. So all those in favor of the amendment, please raise, if you have your green card, now have you registered? That's the other portion of this. All those in favor, please raise your card high enough so we can count them. Chief, Stefan, this is for the amendment. All those against the amendment, please raise your card. I guess that. Hey guys, can you do your counting? Yay votes are 38, nay votes are 140. The amendment is defeated. We are now back talking about the article itself.
Move the question on the original article.
The question has been moved, is there a second? To move the, actually, there's nothing to, wait a minute, Jason. There's nothing to move on. So basically, there's no amendment to talk to. It's going to go on the ballot as written. Seeing nobody against? Does anybody else want to speak to this article? But we can't. Oh, wait a minute, you were in line, so yeah, come on down.
Gail Phillips, 4 Wayside Drive. Want to thank the Board of Selectmen, the Facilities Advisory Board, the Rec Board, and most importantly, all of you for all your hard work and for coming out today to talk about this. Whether I agree with you or not, I'm really glad you're here. So I was only aware of the land swap towards the end of this week, and I just have a couple of questions. So one of them is, I originally thought that you would have to have an equal amount of land swapped, but from what the rec chair said, the rec director said, you could take little tiny parcels of land throughout Exeter, and that would qualify for the land swap. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. So, thank you. And then my second point is the Facilities Board voted 5-0 against this, not because they're against the project. And I would say I totally support having a facility that's multi-generational and handicap accessible. However, one of the reasons the Facility Board voted against it is there are a number of other projects, including water treatment. And I've only lived in Exeter for 4 years, but I get these notices regularly that our drinking water is unsafe. And I am concerned about our drinking water. And I realize we all have to balance these things, but it is a concern. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dana Trahan, 28 Wayland Circle. And I'd like to thank everybody that I should be thanking. I'm not very good at this myself either, but thank you to all. I am so for this project. My children have been a part of the rec department since we moved here in 2005. My daughter started with the summer camp program at the youngest level. My son was a little older, so he started as soon as we were here. My daughter actually last summer was a counselor in training for the first time because the summer camp program and other rec department programs have been so fantastic. She has been loving it to the nth degree. I have found that the staff that I've always worked with has been very supportive and definitely limited in what they can put out there to us because of their facilities and different things, but doing as much as they can and then some with what little they have had. So I can't even imagine what they would be able to offer to us with a greater facility. I appreciate the talking that happened prior, and I'm not sure what the title of the gatherings were, but I went to the senior center with others when it was asked for people 50 and above, not just seniors, to go. And my daughter was happy to announce when I turned a half a century, so I attended. And it was nice to hear, and it was interesting to hear that there were long-term plans, trying to think ahead, so for those of us that are in our 50s, what we would like to be doing now and be doing in the future so that the plans can happen now for it to actually happen. I do know some seniors through church that have been not so thrilled, and I'm sorry, about the senior center. And part of it, I think, is the age, the size, and the great limitations to it. some women that I consider to be older women have said, oh, it's only for the old people. And to some extent, maybe because of the limited programming that there is, it really is something that is kind of a last resort for people that just need to get out and do something, but really not an invigorating experience for others that want a little more. Having this greater facility would have those opportunities for many. I think it would be so important before some solid decisions were made. I don't get the sense, and I can't see very well, hence my guide, that many seniors necessarily have spoken today, whether in favor or against. And when I say that, I mean individuals that would currently be taking part in the programming now. For them to be able to speak and say in person for us all to hear and to be able to vote about what they feel about the program now, what they wished it did have, what friends of theirs in other communities were able to experience at senior centers in other towns and cities close by. And I think that would be good. I think it would be great to be able to talk to some students that have been in that scary situation of having to run to the restroom area and hunker down, wondering, is the storm going to stop? Are they going to stay? Are they going to move? And not only the question of having to then board into buses and head across town to Talbot Gym, but just the size of Talbot Gym. And I think it's 300 plus kids and counselors being jammed into that very small quarter and being very limited there as to what they can do to ride out the storm. Whereas if there was another facility, it would be a little less hectic and crazy and stressful. I got the perspective of it from my daughter as a counselor in training of what it was like to have to corral all the kids and get in there. One child actually was sick, whether it was a coincidence that they were ill that day, or if it was that much of an anxiety-provoking situation, that's what happened to that one poor child. I think one thing that I would love for the rec department to consider in their planning process, assuming that this is going forward, is possible organized transportation, maybe a shuttle bus to go from senior housing over to the facility, other things like that that might be helpful. Partially because transportation in a rural community like ours can be tricky for those of us that can't drive. It might solve some of the traffic problem that people are concerned with. I know that Coast Paratransit will not travel that far, but maybe in talking with Coast, that could be something that could be discussed and maybe altered slightly. And I think the biggest thing, again, is really to try to talk some more to some of the people that are directly impacted so far as being able to use the facility, not just see the facility and drive by it or be concerned about different problems with it, but the people that are trying to use things now or wish so much that they could. I mean, the summer camp program, I mean, maybe it could expand and accommodate more campers. And I've been in that line out in the 10-degree weather, and then when we get inside, lined up and all the way up to the second floor, because it's such a fantastic program, because the kids love it, because it sells out in the first day, because it is affordable and just an amazing staff and a very enjoyable thing. I've talked a lot, and I'm sorry, but I would love for, I don't know if I could ask Greg, the director, to respond to anything I've said, whether to confirm that I've said some on-point things or to correct me if I've really misspoken.
Thank you.
Can I ask that?
Sure.
The new facility would allow for expansion of the camp. I know in a past presentation it was noted that our camp would go from 150 to 400. We serviced over 400 kids last year, and we can actually service more. There were still 50 to 75, and people stopped going on the wait list because it's so long. As for transportation, that is something that we are taking into consideration. That is actually the board behind us is probably on their agenda to deal with transportation issues in town, Dana. We actually had a handicap accessible van in our CIP that we actually pulled out temporarily, knowing that this was going forward, and yeah, that's something that we definitely would be addressing, but that's why having Meals on Wheels as a partner there and allowing them, our seniors, to utilize their van to come to the center would be ideal.
Thank you. Now, we've been at this for just about 2 hours. There's a couple of options here. I could, as moderator, decide and close the discussion, but I don't want to do that unless I would rather see a motion from the audience if we want to continue with discussion, or do we want to finally wrap this up? I want to hear more than one. There is no question.
Article 4. Mr. Moderator, can I make a motion to close debate on this question?
That's what I was asking, yes. It's been moved and seconded. Now we can discuss that briefly, if we could. Does anybody have discussion about wanting to close the debate? Mr. Clement.
I would be opposed to closing debate. Mr. Zwan has had an opportunity to speak on this. A lot of other people have not had an opportunity to speak. This is a very passionate discussion we're having this morning, and this is what deliberative session is all about. I would encourage us to continue discussing this so that everyone feels that their questions have been answered, number one, and two, that their opinions are heard, because this is what a deliberative session, this is what traditional town meeting is all about.
That's why I asked the question. Now, the other thing is, everybody's had an opportunity to speak. They just haven't come forward to speak. So if you want to keep this going, that's your call. All those in favor of keeping it going, all those in favor of Mr. Zwan's proposal to stop the discussion signify by holding up your cards, please. Gentlemen? Yeah, this will be close. All those against the proposal to stop signify by raising your cards, please. Huh? For the proposal by Dr. Zwan, yeas are 96 to stop, nays is 62. So discussion has been stopped.
Wait a minute, you said I...
You can still come up. You two can still come up. Because you were in line.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to be long. So, Jennifer Clark, 61 Acadia Lane. Okay, so there were two studies done. The 2014-15 UNH study, and the only thing I want to discuss about that is that you're probably all familiar with this study, with the stuff highlighted at the bottom. Okay? The thing I want to bring up about this study is that there was a lot of questions asked on the survey about the importance of recreation amenities. And a couple of things that were all tabulated at the bottom. There were a couple of things that weren't highlighted. And you have a couple of columns with the importance and then the satisfaction of parks and open spaces, and they were all essentially 100% important, okay? That's parks and open spaces, recreation programs, athletic fields and sports complexes, trails and greenways, and indoor recreation facilities. They're all 100% important. The important thing is the satisfaction. For parks and open spaces, there was a 78% satisfaction. For recreation programs, there was a 55.6% satisfaction. For athletic fields and sports complexes, there was an 83.4% satisfaction. For trails and greenways, there was a 50% satisfaction. The only thing that had a low satisfaction of almost 73% was the indoor recreation facilities. And I just want to point out, which of course is what the Parks and Recs facilities are trying to point out, that they need the indoor facilities. But I want to point out that was before the why. And I know everybody's talking about how expensive the why is, but the why has a policy of never turning anybody away. They have a financial assistance program for everybody. They not only have silver sneakers, but they have other insurance programs that they accept. So I want to try and balance that idea out. And the town of Exeter is also really trying to stress the point that we should be a community and sharing communal responsibilities with each other. So I'm not trying to push the why, but I'm just trying to make people aware that the facility is there and it does, if not complement, it sort of has redundant facilities. But I know everybody likes the park and recs, and I do too. I mean, I haven't used it. I don't, I just moved here somewhat recently, but I completely understand because we had a town recreation where I come from, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out. That was a 2015 study. There was another study done by the town, I shouldn't really say by the town, but commissioned by the town, by the Turner Group. They did a study to prioritize work that needed to be done in the town. And they found that the rec park ranked 11 out of 14 for the least in need of space or renovations, upgrades, and additions. The other projects that came before that were the town office, the town hall. They determined that 32 Court Street did not need renovations. I think they just determined that, it wasn't worth renovating or something like that. I don't have full notes on that one. The rec park, for the rec park, let's see. Yeah, it ranked 11 out of 14. The libraries there, the DPW, the police and fire, the library. So I just wanted to mention that as well. I also wanted to talk about the budget from November of 2019 compared to the budget for the rec center for January 16th of 2020, which dropped by roughly $2 million. Now, we all thought that this budget simply was going to cut out the parking lot on Wayside and Fuller and the new field, but that wasn't exactly accurate. In going through that budget, they completely deleted all the equipment for the kitchen. which would be the Meals on Wheels. They also deleted $100,000 from Planet Playground. They deleted, they deleted 2% off of the contingency fee, which I don't know if all of you know what that is, but that means if there's a problem that goes wrong with building, the owners have to have money set aside for that what if. So now, instead of it being roughly $500,000, it's now down to $250,000. And we all know that $250,000 in a construction project of that size isn't really going to get you anywhere. So they decreased that from 5% to 3%, and they completely deleted the FF&E fund, which is fixtures, furniture, and equipment. So right now, on the new budget, they have no money for furniture of any kind, or for fixtures, or for furniture, or equipment, sorry, tables, chairs, that sort of thing. And I know that the fellow got up and talked about the 503C, C3, I think it's a 503C group that intends on raising all that money, but what if they don't? What if they don't? How are you going to furnish the buildings? How are you going to furnish the buildings? That's a question.
Yep.
Come on up, yeah.
Hey, excuse me, ma'am. Mr. Bisson, don't tell him to come on, please. We'll take care of it.
Oh, sorry.
All right, a few corrections. The facility study that she responded to, she read it backwards. We are actually one of the worst facilities in town. And the reason they said not to renovate it was because of the age. Yeah. You said we're 11th, but that's, as in furnishings, and we reduce the Meals on Wheels because we're going to be sustainable and bring a lot of things over from the existing facilities we have now. So we're not only being fiscally responsible, but we're also being sustainable. There's no reason to leave a bunch of kitchen equipment in a facility that we no longer run. We're bringing everything with us. And same with the furnishings. And when you say fixtures, all the fixtures are still in the building. So the basketball hoops, everything is in there. The furnishings, our office staff will be taking everything from there. Meals on Wheels will be taking all the equipment, and we'll salvage as much as we can. Thank you.
Excuse me. You can't ask any questions till this woman's finished. Thank you.
It was my understanding from the Meals on Wheels woman that that equipment is over 40 years old.
The building is over 40 years old. They got a new stove cooktop 2 years ago. They bought a new refrigerator probably 3 to 4 years ago. The 3-bay sink was put in by the town about 4 years ago. So a lot of the equipment is new. The facility is old.
That's great. Okay, that's great. I would also like to talk about compliance. Things like the wetlands. Sorry. I would like to talk about the wetlands, which are defined by the town as swamps, bogs, marshes, ponds, lakes, and all such areas as included in the jurisdictional definition of the New Hampshire wetlands. They must comply with local, state, and federal wetlands regulations, setback requirements under these regulations. Have you done the wetlands studies, the high-intensity soil studies, the submission of utilities plans, drainage, all those things? What we're concerned about is because you're so close to a water source,
My name is Gordon Leedy. I am a landscape architect and planner with Ty and Bond. We're the consultants for the town and the rec committee in developing plans for the project. In answer to your question, there are wetlands, regulated wetlands on the site. We are proposing to have a minor impact. There's several tiers of impacts that are included in the DES regulations. We are proposing a minor impact. We will require a wetland permit from the state. We haven't applied for that yet because we don't have a project yet. We have applied for, there are other permits that are required from the state. The alteration of terrain permit is for drainage and water quality controls. We have applied for that and responded to requests for additional information from DES. We anticipate having that permit in hand within the next few weeks. So, and what that does is it creates an additional level of scrutiny for the very reason that you cite in terms of being in what they term a Class A watershed, which is a drinking water supply watershed. So we were actually required to provide a higher level of water quality treatment and environmental considerations as a part of this project than we would in other less sensitive portions of town. Does that answer your question?
Yes, stay here.
Okay.
Can you give the square feet of wetlands that you'll be filling?
I don't have that specifically, but it's less than, the categories are, I believe, 2,500 square feet or less, 10,000 square feet or less, and then 1 acre or less, and then over an acre is a major permit. So we're maybe right around that 2,500 square foot range. It's a very small isolated wetland that is basically down at the bottom of the slope behind the tennis courts, and I would argue was really created by the construction of the tennis courts.
She's been talking.
So.
Can you just say what I...
Yeah, Mrs. Corson asked what the proposed impact to wetlands might be in terms of square footage. I don't have an exact number, but I would guess it's in the range of 2,000 to say 3,000 square feet.
Is that also behind the building too?
It's actually, it's in the footprint of the proposed building. So,
okay. Now, does your water sources come over to Acadia Lane into that big aquifer? Do you know where the drainage goes?
The drainage follows the existing pattern of drainage. So it goes essentially out to the highway and then down adjacent to the highway down to that the stream that comes under the highway just to the west of your property.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not going anywhere.
And the traffic.
With your permission.
Well, my question is, Ms. Clark?
Yes.
How much longer are you going to be? You've been talking for 20 minutes and now you're going line by line.
2 minutes. If you lived next door, you'd want to know too.
Well, there were meetings you could have gone to.
I went to every single meeting.
Did you ask these questions there?
I asked a slew of different questions. So,
Go ahead.
the traffic impact analysis, are you going to repeat that if it was done at all?
We'll do, we've had discussions with the town. Planning director doesn't see a specific need for an in-depth traffic study. We most likely will do a trip generation analysis and take a look at volumes out on Hampton Road to determine if there's any need for a deceleration lane or other improvements that might be warranted. My initial assessment of traffic is that there is ample capacity on Hampton Road.
Are you considering a traffic light at all?
No. It likely would not be warranted, and you can't do a traffic signal unless it's warranted.
Okay. Environmental impact assessment?
There isn't a requirement to do an environmental impact assessment.
Even with the water?
Ms. Clark,
No.
Ms. Clark, you guys are having a separate discussion there.
I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, if you have any more questions.
Fine. And just as one more comment to the fellow that mentioned the comment about us abutters not having solar panels, our complex did not take down one tree. It replaced a cement factory with housing for people that contribute to the economy of Exeter. So I just want you to know that it's not apples to apples.
Sir, if you're the last one, really quick.
I'll be quick, thank you. Nick Campion, 75 Newfields Road. Apparently I'm the fact checker on this because there was plenty of trees taken down when that development was put in. Also, just to clarify, the recreation facility that they currently house their offices in, just for clarity's sake, that was voted the #2 worst building in town in that report. The only one ahead of it was a maintenance shed. So you had that backwards. And finally, I am in support of this project. I think it's a great initiative to bring the community together. I just have one quick question for you, Mr. Moderator. In an effort to kind of read the room and understand the audience here, if it's possible, I'd like to move to restrict reconsideration on Article 4 after the vote.
Well, it would be great, but there's nothing to reconsider.
Well, I would hate for the
You don't want to go back and discuss it? We've already voted to close discussion on it.
Okay.
So you can ask for reconsideration, sure.
No.
Because then that'll take care of Articles 5 and 6 as well.
To be clear, I want to restrict reconsideration after 75% of this room leaves.
Restrict, yeah. You can, yeah, go ahead, make the motion.
So I'd like to make that motion.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor? Opposed? There you go.
Thank you.
All right, it's 10 minutes to 12. We're going to take a 15-minute recess. Be back. Oh, my God. Okay, let's go. Down to the microphone, please. Pardon? Right. Yeah, I'm going to tell him when he gets there.
At the January 21st Select Board meeting, the board voted 3-2 to support the project. They also said, by hearing all our comments today, that they would maybe vote to reconsider. So I make a motion
No,
that...
sorry.
No, can't do that, okay.
We've killed the article.
I didn't know, thank you.
Yeah, our article's done.
Sorry, thank you.
We're moving on to Article 7. Choose town officers. Ms. Cowan.
Mr. Moderator, I move to nominate the following people to the Budget Recommendations Committee. Nancy Belanger, Kaylee Bryden, Liz Canada, Dawn Clement, Amy Farnham, Anna Grazier, Bob Kelly, Judy Rowan, Christine Suter, Corey Stevens, Craig Wareham, Christopher Zigmont, and Anthony Zwan.
Do the rest of them too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need to vote?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Just.
Tell me what the nominations are.
Oh, so we're nominating who's going to serve on the Budget Recommendations Committee for the next year. Okay. And Mr. Moderator, I move to nominate the following. Jay Perkins, Weyer, Doug Eastman, Measurer of Wood and Bark, and Doug Eastman, Fence Viewer.
Are there any nominations from the floor? Article 7 will appear as written. I hate to see you all leave because of the rec park, but Article 8, operating budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate in an operating budget, not including appropriation by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein totaling $19,605,537. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $19,323,051, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law or by the governing body may hold, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Estimated tax impact is 18 cents per thousand or $18 per 100,000 assessed property value. Majority vote required. Board recommends it 5-0. Is there anyone willing to discuss this? Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sounded really loud. I would be happy to walk through the operating budget requests for the body, and I will try to be as succinct as I can with this presentation. The budget process starts in August, as you can see by the calendar up here. We do have a Budget Recommendations Committee that was just nominated, as you heard, that spends a lot of time reviewing our budget with the town departments and operates a subcommittee process of their own, and they grind through the numbers for both all three of our funds, the general, water, and sewer funds, and then make a recommendation over to the select board who deliberates on the budget, and that culminates in the budget hearing that was brought up earlier today. And then we are here Saturday, February 1st to discuss the budget and the articles, and then the election of the town happens Tuesday, March 10th. As you can see, the format, there are three separate operating budget articles, general, water, and sewer, and they don't include the financial articles from the CIP that are appearing on your warrant as a separate group of articles that are recommended separately. So there is the budget. The estimated tax impact of the budget this year is 18 cents per thousand. But as we get into the discussion, I just want to make sure that everybody understands. We had a couple of, we had an article put on the warrant a couple of years ago that actually set up this estimated tax impact. And one of the things that it really doesn't include is the year-over-year and warrant articles. So as we go through the warrant articles today, you're going to see that the estimated tax impact of those warrant articles is 24 cents a thousand. But again, that's compared to zero last year when in fact we actually approved $488,000 in warrant articles. So I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation so you can understand the bottom line estimated tax impact of what we're talking about for everything in this budget. There is a history of the budget recently. So this year it's a 2.83% increase over FY19. The FY19 number is actually the original operating budget article, but last year during town meeting, we approved 2 collective bargaining agreements and also a capital item. So the starting point is really $19,117,296. So you can see our recent tax rate history as well, $7.25 per thousand in 2018, $5.71. We just dropped quite a bit in the last year on the tax rate. And also another key stat is that the town makes up approximately 25% of the total tax levy. So when you pay your bill, 25% is coming to the town for these services, 75% is going to either the schools or the county. You can see the request there. Again, I mentioned the 2.83, and it's actually a 2.55% over the adjusted FY19 budget. And those are all of the different services that are incorporated into our operating budget. As you can see, it's quite a bit. It includes police, fire, public works, parks and rec, the public library, also debt service and capital, and all of our fixed costs, our planning, building, economic development functions, and so forth. So the highlights of the FY20 general fund budget, the largest three departments, as we talk about every year, are police, fire, EMS, and public works. That makes up the lion's share, about 70% of the total town operating budget. And in this budget, there is a step adjustment. We have a pay plan with steps in it, plus a cost of living of 1% for eligible employees. And then I'm happy to report that all of our collective bargaining contracts are approved and in effect as part of this budget as well. So there aren't any separate bargaining agreements to vote on. Our health insurance did increase again this past year, 8.7% for all plans. The budgetary impact wasn't heavy on that, but we did experience a percentage increase in the overall plans. And then our employees are contributing 18% to our higher cost plan, which is Blue Choice, as compared to 13% for our HMO Access Blue New England. Personnel requests, there are no new personnel requests in the budget. We do have some of the positions that were approved last year will be funded on a full year basis in this coming year, so that's been included in the budget. As we know, FY20 is also an election year, lots of elections going on, and so we've had to increase that budget. There are 4 versus 1 in FY19. And we're also taking a tack to improve some of our IT infrastructure. Cybersecurity is a big deal these days, of course, we all know that. So we are doing an IT audit. We're doing some email filtering and archiving enhancements and some software updates that are going to help in that area. There's also an upgrade of our vision assessment software system that is included in the budget. Some of the other highlights you see, police and fire is looking to add some additional IT assistance to their department. Again, this is one of those weaknesses that we've identified that they really need a lot of assistance these days with a lot of different IT needs, and we're trying to carve out some contract services in this budget to help them out. The DPW, there's $25,000 in the budget to do some initial work on a highway garage update, which is in the offing in the future. And then for highways and streets, there's a one-time expense of $23,000 to upgrade a culvert on Tamarind Lane, and then signalization improvements on Hampton Road at the crosswalk area adjacent to the rec park for a rapid flashing beacon there. So we're going to improve the safety of that area. There are solid waste contract increases. There is also an increase in the household hazardous waste budget, that service we do every October, very successful event, and that's offset by revenue. Then we have some DPW landfill monitoring requirements for the Powder Mill Road landfill and Crossroad landfill that are both inactive, but we have to meet our requirements for monitoring there. The snow removal budget has increased $20,000. The trend has been higher on that. We've modified some health plan changes in the DPW garage budget. That includes our mechanics. Parks and Rec Senior Programs Initiative of $7,500, DPW maintenance contract cleaning for the current building, which I would imagine would continue on until a new building was in place if the vote passes. And then townwide expenses, we have returned our workers' comp. Last year we had a premium actually of $115,000 that reduced that budget, and that's come back up to its normal level, so we've added that in. These are the components and the different functions. I know you have those in your packet, so I won't spend a lot of time on those, but that's the different breakdown of the different departments and functions that we have in town. I would also point out the Welfare Human Services budget. That includes $100,000 plus in human services grants to different organizations that the town supports through our Human Services Funding Committee. They do a great job parsing out an amount of money to support those organizations. That's a pie that doesn't look that good. So our revenue projections. In the general fund, our revenues applicable to the budget would be $7,594,708. The budget estimate you see there, 2.83% over FY19, and that's the estimated taxes to be raised by this budget, and then the total taxes raised by the 2019 budget. Revenues, we've adjusted some of these revenues upward in recent years. Motor vehicle registration fees are doing very well. We did have that fee increase for blue bags to help offset the solid waste costs, so we've upped our income from departments a little bit to accommodate that. I also want to say thank you to our state representatives and state senator who have really helped us out with local aid issues. Because of their efforts, we were able to return $160,000 in general revenue sharing this past year, and it really helped us out on the tax rate. We apply that directly to the tax rate, so very important. So thank you very much. So we need to talk about the default budget, so we will. The default budget is the amount, this is what happens if the operating budget is actually voted down. We fall back to a default budget, which is, there's always a lot of discussion about the default budget at the state level in terms of what it means, but basically that is the definition of the default budget. It's last year's budget increased or reduced, reduced by one-time expenses and increased by debt servicing contracts and other obligations previously approved or mandated by law. So that is $282,486 less than the general fund budget. Another look at the budget. General fund, so you see 2.83%. The default budget is actually 1.34% over the FY19 budget. And the dollar increase over FY19 is $538,680. So here's where we get back into talking about the tax impacts. So as I mentioned earlier, the current tax rate for the town share is $5.71. If you look at the operating budget impact for this year, it works out to $5.47. You would add 19 cents in overlay and veterans credit to that number on the budget basis to get you to 566. And then the warrant articles are considered separate and they would be applied separately. So if in other words, if we just approve the budget and nothing else, then the tax rate that we would project would be 566 based upon a 1% increase in valuation. So it would actually be a decrease. So that's all I have on Article 8, Mr. Moderator, unless there are questions.
Any questions, Mr. Dean, or about the budget? The Article 7 will go on the...
Sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry, Mr.
This may be the shortest time I've ever spent at the microphone. Paul Royal, 3 Pumpkin Circle, Exeter, New Hampshire. Not too long ago, we had a battle about a 3% tax cap, which was roundly defeated. One of the reasons why we did the right thing and put that out of our heads is because I see all the time how well our select board, our budget folks, all the volunteers that work for this town do a great job along with Russ Dean at keeping costs under control while maintaining a decent budget and the vitality of a town and keeping its desirability high and safe for our children. I urge everyone to approve of this or to let it go as is. Great job, and thank you to everyone who has worked so hard in this town to make sure that we continue to have responsible budgets.
Thank you. Anyone else? The article on the ballot is written. Article 9, Water Fund, 220 Water Fund budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate as a water operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately? The amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or is amended by the vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein totaling $3,552,795. Should this article be defeated, the water default budget shall be $3,457,712, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law. Majority vote required, recommended by the board 5-0. Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So as you can see, these are the numbers for the water budget, $3,552,795. That is an 8.25% increase over the prior year from FY19. There is no rate impact for this particular budget because we do set the rates to capture the revenue that we need to fund the budget. And one note I made in this particular instance is that there's an article coming up a little bit later on the groundwater surface water assessment, and we do expect that we'll have enough in our revenues for FY20 to cover that article as well without having to adjust any of the rates. Those are the major programs that make up the water budget. There's administration, which is the indirect costs that come from our general government, as well as an allocation from the Public Works leadership that makes up that budget, and it's also the fixed costs of the water system like insurance and consulting, permitting, legal, things of that nature. Water billing is the billing personnel and the printing and the bills that go out to the residents each month. And then we have the water distribution system. That is the personnel that maintains the system, the maintenance, the tank maintenance, which is a big part of it with our 3 storage tanks that we have in town. Natural gas and electric costs of the pump stations and the pump station maintenance. The treatment budget is for 2 plants, the surface water and the groundwater plant. There is money in the budget for FY20 for a lagoon cleaning. We don't have to do that every year, but this upcoming year we are contemplating it. And then equipment maintenance, lab supplies and equipment, chemicals, natural gas, and electricity to run the plants. That's $813,514. And then debt service, which are capital projects that have been approved via the bond route. And some examples of the major capital projects just in recent years are the Epping Road water tank, J.D. Hill water lines, the Larry Lane groundwater plant, Washington Street water line. And the FY20 budget for that is $1,164,650, which is a small increase from FY19. And then capital outlay are smaller capital items, and this year's budget includes some pump replacements at the surface water plant, modulating valve replacement, and that budget's $165,091. So those are the different components of the budget for the water fund. I will also add, Mr. Moderator, for those of you who may not know, or you probably do know at this point, I do want to thank the efforts of our Public Works Department who worked through the process of the total trihalomethane remediation to a successful conclusion. And our surface water plant is in fact aging, and at some point we will need to do something with it, but they, through their great efforts, have brought us back into compliance on that front, and I think they really actually deserve a round of applause for that because it was a very complex project. So with that, Mr. Moderator, I'll yield the floor.
Any questions of Mr. Dean or towards the Article 9? Seeing none, we'll be going on the ballot. And for those of us in J.D. Hill, thanks a lot. Article 10, 2020 sewer fund budget. Shall the town of Exeter raise and appropriate a sewer operating budget, not including appropriation by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $7,685,605. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $7,584,841, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Exeter or by law. A majority vote required and is recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As you can see, this is the first year of our operating budget in the sewer fund looking markedly different than it has in the past. And it goes without saying, it's up 170%, goes without saying most of that increase is due to the first year debt payment of $4.3 million on the new wastewater facility, main pump station, and force mains that are running along the Route 85 Newfields Road corridor up to the new plant. That was a $55 $1.5 million project. And again, I want to give my thanks to Public Works, and they did a great job with the construction. And as a result, we're getting the results we thought we would get, which is a much reduced nitrogen load into the Great Bay. And it has actually assisted greatly with our conversations with EPA and the surrounding communities, because we actually used to go into those conversations being kind of the worst on the list, and now we're in the catbird seat. So if there's anything to be gained from those conversations, we can say that we're doing more than our share with respect to that particular issue. So I'm happy to report on that. We all know that rates have been adjusted to accommodate this payment. The one other point I wanted to make, and I want to make sure that I make it, we spent a lot of time at the State House this past spring working with our legislative delegation, our State Senator John Morgan, Lisa Bunker, Julie, our state reps, Skip Berrien, and we're able to secure the reinvigoration of the state aid grant program. And due to all of those efforts, we are receiving $700,000 to offset that debt payment of $4.3 million. And I've talked about it a lot. It wasn't easy. We went through several hearings to get to the finish line on that, and it was very tenuous, but at the end of the day, that money materialized. So that is a great, otherwise ratepayers would have had to pick up the differential. And remember that the budget is an every 2-year process with the state, so keep an eye on that. But we're locked in for 2 payments and hopefully for more after that. Major programs are really similar to water, except you see in collection and treatment, they're different. And I will just highlight the treatment budget very quickly. This is really scale increase. You see that solids handling, which is now part of our treatment process, solids handling and disposal, is $336,000 budget in that budget. And then we also have a requirement for more operators. So we have 5 full-time operators at the new wastewater facility. That's a $110,000 increase. And then the electricity to run the new plant and the new main pump station is also quite an increase. So you can see that the operating budget, the O&M budget, has certainly increased as well. The FY20 budget for debt service, as you can see, includes the $4.3 million for the wastewater facility payment. So the overall debt budget is $4.8. And then we have the capital outlay for wastewater improvements, vehicle purchases, and that's $120,000. So that's some smaller capital in that particular area. So you can see in the default, the percent increase of the sewer budget proposed over the default is 1.34%, so they're pretty close. I will tell you that when we come back next year, I have a little bit better news. The $4.3 million payment's actually going to go down to 3.6. So it's a pretty decent drop in 1 year, and that's because the first year payment is front-loaded with a small percent of administrative fee that we need to pay DES to access the state revolving fund loan program that we take advantage of. That's all I have, Mr. Moderator.
Don't tease us with that kind of number. Is there any other
We're
questions?
projecting, Mr. Moderator.
Any questions of the 2020 sewer fund budget article? Or Mr. Dean? Seeing none, will go on the ballot as submitted. Article 11, groundwater surface water assessment program, to see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $200,000 for the purpose of groundwater and surface water rehabilitation, engineering, feasibility study, and land acquisitions for water supply purposes. The sum shall come from $200,000 in the water funds. Estimated tax impacts, 0. Water funds, majority vote required. Recommended by the board 5-0. Anybody to speak to this? Sir? Is there anybody speaking for the article, Mr. Dean? No? There's, sir, come forward.
Jim Breeling, 7 Nelson Drive. I had some questions about groundwater and surface water assessment. We live along the Little River, which is a tributary to the Exeter River, and we noticed for reasons of development that there's additional development along that river. There's an aquifer, a town-defined aquifer that is right at the Court Street Bridge. One side of the bridge is the aquifer, the other side is not. Does this study look to redefine the limits of the town aquifers, to include more wetland, or is it just to explore existing aquifers? And, the issue is, along the Little River, should more of that watershed be preserved as aquifer land rather than developed in order to meet the goals of fresh, clean water for town citizens?
Ms. Perry. This is Jennifer Perry, Public Works Director.
This groundwater assessment project is only looking at potential water supplies for the town drinking water supply. It is not necessarily looking at changing any of the aquifer protection districts or any rezoning issues. We have identified 3 areas that may merit additional investigation. In the future, it may wind up relating to zoning or land use restrictions, but at this time, it does not.
Just a follow-up question then. Procedurally, if the zoning board makes determinations that land is buildable, and then later on people find out that it shouldn't have been built because of issues with wetland and aquifer, what is does this help clarify the process for adjudicating those zoning board decisions that might be made in absence of information about groundwater?
I'm just looking to see if our town planner is here, who is more of the land use expert. I really can't answer that question, I'm afraid. Maybe if you worded it slightly differently. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Don Clement, Thelma Drive. This particular article generated very good discussion at the Budget Recommendation Committee. And I just want you to focus for a second when it talks about the purpose here. It's the purpose of groundwater and surface water rehab, engineering, feasibility study, land acquisition for water safe supply purposes. This makes this warrant article rather kind of a potpourri of purposes. I would like to see in the future, as we move here, that we kind of break this out a little better, because this is kind of like a wide-ranging $200,000 to be put to multiple purposes, and it's a little too vague from my perspective on how we should be spending our money. For example, it talks about land acquisition. I'm not sure we're going to acquire any land in Exeter for $200,000. So I think this is just a recommendation or suggestion in the future, if we would align this a little better so that we have some specifics. We know we're going to spend X amount of money on rehab for the surface water treatment plant or the groundwater treatment plant, or a better breakdown again.
Actually, last year, in 2019, when the department started with the capital improvement process, we did have 2 separate CIP worksheets. And working with the Budget Recommendations Committee, the CIP process, the town manager, it was determined it would be a little bit more informed if we had a single approach that dealt with both groundwater and surface surface water as we were planning for our water supply needs of the future. So it was an intentional kind of assimilation of two separate projects. However, as we have proceeded in this year with this project, and I should say in 2019 with the project, we do have two parallel tracks, if you will, going forward for both surface water, addressing the needs of our older surface water treatment plant that essentially many aspects of that plant were built in the 1930s and were updated in the 1990s, but as we all know, it has been challenged with meeting current standards and future standards. But it's an important piece of our overall water supply. It still is providing 60% of the drinking water supply for the town of Exeter today. The groundwater piece, as everybody knows, we did construct a new groundwater treatment plant in 2015. It is doing a great job. It's currently providing about 40% of the water supply needs of the town. But in the drought of 2016, we did observe diminished volumes of groundwater that were available. And so part of this process is to, number one, find additional groundwater that can be treated at the groundwater treatment plant. We have room for a fourth filter at that facility. And to bring back up the original projections of groundwater that initially we had started that whole treatment process with. So I apologize if that's a little bit of a ramble, but I did want people to understand that it has been a consensus to move forward with both surface water and groundwater at the same time in order to come forward next year with a much better defined program for what our future water approaches and needs will be.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Article 11 will go on the ballot as written. Article 12, Folsom Acres Lift Station Rehabilitation. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $150,000 for the purpose of rehabilitating the sewer lift station located in Folsom Acres off Prentice Way. This sum to come from $150,000 in sewer fees. Estimated tax impact, 0. Majority vote required, recommended by the Select Board, 5-0. Any questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, it'll go on the ballot as written. Article 13, Lincoln Street Parking Program. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $115,000 for the purpose of implementing recommendations from the Lincoln Street Parking Report dated January 14th, 2020, to include paid parking along Lincoln Street with consideration of 1 hour free parking. The sum raised will be paid back to the town's general fund through parking fees. All parking revenues exceeding the initial program cost will be accounted for in the Municipal Transportation Improvement Fund adopted by the town at the 2005 town meeting. The sum of $115,000 to come from unassigned funds. Estimated tax impact is 0. Majority vote required, recommended by the board, 5-0. Ms. Sermon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, everyone. And I'll certainly have the subject matter experts speak to this, but we do introduce a few of the articles if we want to, and I did want to introduce this one because I am in favor of the paid parking to be instituted on Lincoln Street. I'd certainly like it to go throughout the town, but I realize we have to start somewhere. We mainly need to help the business community on Lincoln Street by limiting parking there for 2 hours. Many of our train riders are occupying the very spaces that our business people actually need. And it's nothing against the train riders. I mean, I would certainly park there if it wasn't a charge either. But we really need to get our arms around this. And since April of 2019, there was a court ruling that's in the packet. It has handicapped our police department from enforcing any chalking of tires, any kind of real enforcement. So that is also sort of another problem with the fact that we don't have this parking area metered or set to 2 hours or various things. So there's a whole nice study done that we'll discuss. But I do see the importance of this, and I hope that you will support the article either either as written, or we can talk about the monies and what do we actually need. Thank you.
Anyone to discuss the article? Seeing none, we'll go on the ballot. Whoa, we got, oh, go ahead. Eileen snuck up. Just go to the microphone. Jeez.
You gotta be quick, Don.
I do.
Eileen Flockhart, 7 Jack's Court. I guess my feeling is a sense of sensitivity to the business owners on Lincoln Street who've endured a year or two, at least, of construction and loss of business, and now, may be concerned about people needing to pay to park, and would that be a detriment to their business? And do they have a sense of other businesses in town that are going to be able to go without, any cost of parking? And I also have a sense from my personal reaction when I go to try to park in Portsmouth. And there are some very restrictive and financially restrictive situations with paid parking that have kind of bumped up and up and up and up. And I would hate to see us fall into that category and discourage people coming to town. So I realize it's a start. I'm not sure if everybody's feeling that good about it, especially the people on Lincoln Street and the businesses there. Just curious to know what your reactions have been.
Mr. Clement?
Thank you. A couple of things on this particular article is we note, and I haven't read the parking study, the parking report, but you notice it's dated January 14th, 2020, roughly about 2 weeks ago. So something that came out in 2 weeks, I'm not sure it's really had an opportunity to get an awful lot of discussion by the board, who saw it for the first time on their last board meeting, or the general public. So I'm a little concerned this is getting rushed through. Now, is there a parking issue out in the Lincoln Street area? There's no question, everybody agrees to that. But I think we need to be careful of are we just singling out the Lincoln Street area and putting in paid parking there? And I know I've heard arguments that should we have paid parking, should it be all over town? And we got a parking problem all over town, people talk about, but are we just singling out the Lincoln Street area? I'm also concerned that in the recommendations, it's talking about paid parking on Lincoln Street parking. Does that include the satellite streets? It's like Tremont and Daniel Street and others, where typically if we institute paid parking on a parking lot or a front street, the spillover happens on these side streets where there's no restrictions. I think that's becomes a detriment to the people who live there. I think that has to be considered. The other thing is how much, do we have an estimate of how much, we don't even know what the parking charge is going to be yet, do we?
Not that I'm aware of.
And we have no idea of how much revenue is going to be generated from this parking.
Not that
I would
I'm
imagine.
aware of.
So, that's something I think we should get an idea before we vote on this, number one. And two, it's a question of all parking revenues exceeding the initial program cost, which is $115,000, will be accounted for in the Municipal Transportation Improvement Fund by the town 2005 town meeting. Do we want to consider parking revenues just being put into a particular fund, the municipal parking fund, or is there a way, if this is over time, this is a way of generating general fund revenue that would help us reduce our tax rate? And I don't know if that's possible to do that, but I mean, I think it's something we should consider. So I have so many questions on this, and I'm sure the board had a lot of questions and talked about it when they were presented this, but I really think that I'm very ambivalent on how to vote on this, knowing we have a problem, but I'm not sure if this is cooked yet. Thank you.
I'm Carol Smith, and I live in J.D. Hill. I'm wondering, is the train situation, has that brought this to the forefront? And where will people park if they're taking the train into Boston? Where are they gonna go? Where are they gonna park? Are they gonna park in the school parking lot, or are they gonna try to park in RJ's for the day? Or where are people gonna park if they want to take the train into town for the whole day? Especially during school vacation, when kids end up going into town for a day with mom and dad. So, is that what has encouraged this parking problem on Lincoln Street?
I think a gentleman behind you may help with that. Darren?
Good afternoon, folks. Darren Winham, Economic Development Director. So there's some people here that will probably be able to answer your questions. The police chief, of course, and Mr. Burke, who actually performed the study that you, if you grabbed it out back, you can see it. Just want folks to understand that, and Don's right, it was kind of rushed. The reason it was rushed is because of the ruling that Ms. Sermon mentioned. So what's happening right now, our businesses up there are, they're having a very rough time because train riders, most are great, but some realize that we are no longer able to enforce the 2-hour parking. So what they're doing is seeing the 2-hour parking sign and parking there anyway, and they're parking there all day. And it's having a pretty big detriment. So police chief is going to say in a minute that this is really the only way we can try to enforce that. And then, of course, I think Russ, if he wants to answer Don's question about the Municipal Transportation Improvement Fund. So, but it's not a money grab in any way. This is trying to solve a problem for the businesses.
Mr. Moderator, through you, I would just comment on Don's point. The intent of this article is we've estimated the capital cost of implementing this system at $115,000. That's actually in the report. And the idea is that we would set up a rate structure, which is really the select board's decision, recoup the revenue into the general fund to the tune of that initial $115,000. So depending upon the fee structure, it may take a couple of years to actually recover that $115,000, if not 3. And then at that point, any additional revenue we would be able to generate through this would go to the Municipal Transportation Improvement Fund. That's our intent at this time, is to operate it in that manner. But the fee structure, rate structure, we have recommendations, but we haven't had a chance to act on those yet. But it is a little bit of chicken or the egg, because if we don't spend this money to get it going, or we can't implement a program without having some kind of funding source to get the capital equipment established to be able to begin the program. So hopefully that makes sense.
Doug Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court, Exeter. If you institute paid parking, the cars will not go away. People still need to get to the businesses. People still need to park their car to take the train. We should be encouraging people to take the train, not discouraging them from taking the train. I recognize the problem that the businesses have, but now you're going to give them a different problem, which is competition with free parking downtown. And it doesn't solve the basic problem, which is insufficient parking in town, both downtown and on Lincoln Street, and that's what you should be focusing on, not a postage stamp solution.
Good afternoon. I'm John Burke. I'm the parking consultant who drafted this study.
Excuse me, John?
Yes.
You're not a resident of Exeter, correct?
I'm sorry, yes, no.
So I got to ask the body to allow Mr. Burke to speak. All those in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
Oh, he's on the list?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that it's really, this study really, and the results is talking about better managing the assets that you have. So what we found is during the middle of the day, that 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock lunchtime period, there's a shortage of parking in the retail district.
And there's a non-compliance with the 2-hour zone. So many people staying over the 2 hour. A lot of those are train riders, right? So at the very same time that retail district parking is completely being used, and if you want to come in and visit one of the stores, you can't get there. You have to walk out. But at that same time, you go out a little bit beyond the school on outer Lincoln Street, from Garfield to Front, 3-minute walk, completely empty. So what a lot of communities have done over time is they say, hey, let's look at that 4 or 5 minute walk zone, because that's considered a reasonable walk for an employee, for a train rider, and basically for anyone who's storing their car all day in your town. How can we get those folks to go out there and free up the spaces near the stores for the customers, so the businesses are making more money? Basically, so those spaces need to turn several times a day. If they don't turn, the cash register's not turning. So it's really about looking at that zone and saying, how can we incentivize folks to go out there and park? Train riders. You know, and one of the things that we have a shortcoming of here in Exeter is that the train station has the highest ridership in New Hampshire, the fewest amount of parking spaces, and it's free, which is the counter of economics of supply and demand. Just the opposite of what you would expect. Typically, that would be the highest price parking. So what you might be doing is inviting people from all over New Hampshire to come down, store their car in Exeter all day, okay? Rather than go to a train station that might be right near their house, the next town over. You reduce traffic congestion, you better use all of the parking assets on the rail line, and more importantly for you, the Lincoln Street corridor has better management. People now say, hey, it's a good deal to go out there and park beyond the raised crosswalk at the school, because I can park there for free. I don't have to worry about all this congestion in the train station lot. So they'll have economic choice to either pay a little bit more at the train station or maybe walk out there and use some of that space. So,
Any other comments? And just as a sidebar, the Globe today came out with the Downeaster has had the most ridership ever this past year. So I'm just saying that the train is being used. So seeing that there's none, it'll be on the ballot as written. Yes, Dr. Swan.
Break the $100,000 mark, which means that the discussion will become proportionally even longer. I'd like to request consideration for restricting reconsideration for all 3 CD articles.
It's been moved for reconsideration. Is there a second? I mean, restricting reconsideration, sorry. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Article 14, Pickpocket Dam, to see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $110,000 for the purpose of completing tasks related to a letter of deficiency from the NHDES on Pickpocket Dam. The sum shall come from general taxation. Estimated tax impact is 5 cents per thousand or $5.01 per 100,000. Assessed property value, majority vote required. Recommended by the Select Board 3-2. Ms. Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The reason that I supported this motion is because we received a letter of delinquency from the Department of Environmental Services. We know that there is a problem with this dam. We know we need to address it, and the problem is going to potentially get worse and put people's property and potentially their lives at risk, and that's not something that I'm comfortable not addressing, which is why I supported this article. I think as a board we debated long and hard how much of a priority it should be, and then, you know, the votes fell where they did.
That's it.
Mr. Clement.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. Don Clement, Selma Drive. Having lived through the dam issue at the Great Dam for many years, and certainly was a proponent of the work that we did at the Great Dam, I have some questions that I've also raised, I think, before the Select Board before, is this particular dam is owned by the town of Exeter, but half of it lies in the town of Brentwood. And unlike the Great Dam, what we do to this dam, if one of the decisions is to remove it, has an impact on the town of Brentwood, because the waters behind them as an impoundment, and the impacts would be certainly felt in Brentwood. So the question I've asked, and I'll ask it again today, is that have we had any discussions with the town of Brentwood relative to this particular project?
No? Nothing formal.
And I think we should, because I think even though we are responsible because of the impacts potentially on the town of Brentwood, I think Brentwood should have a role in the discussion. And beyond the role, I think this costs money, because this is only $110,000 is only the first step. This will provide a study that may get to us to the point that we have to spend a lot more money. By involving Brentwood, maybe we can also get them to put up some money for the solution. So again, I will encourage the Select Board or the Town Manager to begin earnest discussions with the Town of Brentwood on this project. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Would you want to speak? And I just basically want to say exactly what Don just said, and that's only because the 3-2 vote, I am against this for just the reasons that he just described, because I also asked, have we had conversations with Brentwood, and we haven't had them yet. So I will not be supporting this article, because I think that there's consequences and that there may be some money we could share with the other town, and we shouldn't take on this burden, exactly what Mr. Clement just said. Thank you.
And who are you, ma'am?
Sorry. I'm Ann Sermon, sorry about that, you're a Select Board member.
Hi, Richard Huber, 3 Sterling Hill Lane, Unit 326, and Chairman of the River Advisory Committee. I would propose supporting this article. The Pickpocket Dam is now decided to be a high-hazard dam, and there are steps that need to be done to determine what options we have and what those options will cost, and we need to get to the point where we can present this in public meetings so that everyone's aware of what the issue is. And we have deadlines. Currently, we're committed to advise the Dam Bureau on how the deficiency will be fixed by June of 2022. And we're supposed to have it fixed so it's safe by 12/1/25. Not forever, it's not a terrific amount of time, and there are steps we have to address before we get there. The first step is to support the feasibility studies that will determine what are the options to fix this dam. And it's my thought that after we've gotten that study and we have those facts, we address it with Brentwood. Because right now, there's not enough clarity about what's involved to address it with Brentwood. But I'm absolutely sure after these studies, after the engineering studies are done, and we have cost estimates for all the different ways this could be fixed, that's when we should embrace discussion with Brentwood and come to a common idea of how we're going to get to the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other one? Any other discussion on Article 14? Seeing none, we'll go on as submitted. Article 15, appropriate capital reserve fund, park improvements. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Parks Improvement Capital Reserve Fund previously established. The sum is to come from general taxation. Tax impact is .046 cents, 4.6 cents per thousand, or $4.55 per 100,000 value. Majority vote required. Select Board recommended 4-1. Anyone to speak? Ms. Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for staying. This article puts some money away in a capital reserve fund, which is a non-lapsing fund. So at some point when we have saved up enough, we won't be here to ask you for more money. The purpose of it is to renovate and repair parks other than the rec park up on Hampton Road, but parks like Gale Street and now I'm losing them all, Gilman Park, the Park Street Common, the Kids Park on Front Street. They've all needed some upgrading, and like we do with our maintenance projects for Public Works, we put in a lump sum in the budget every year and let the maintenance department prioritize their projects. Some of these projects that you'll see on the description are, excuse me, maintenance, or most of them are maintenance related. If you go by the Townhouse Common at the corner of Front Street and Court Street, you'll see there's new fencing, but it hasn't been finished. You'll see that the hedge that made you lean like this if you walk down Front Street and Court Street is gone. And those are the kind of things that this fund will allow us to do without having to come to you every year saying we need to fix something. So it's very much like what we do with the Public Works Department. One of the things I'm excited about on here is the putting Gale Park on the list, because although it's pretty well preserved from its original state, the landscaping does need some improvement. The shrubberies, the circle shrubberies are just horrible. So with this, we can make something a little bit more beautiful, and we can choose materials that are more sustainable and less maintenance. Thank you.
Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. For the body that is still here, I just wanted to point out that this is a highlighted example of what I was saying before about the estimated tax impact. Even though this says there's a tax impact, we appropriated money last year, fiscal year 19, that you can't reflect in the tax impact here. So actually, year over year, there's no change.
Anyone else to speak? Seeing none, it'll go on as submitted. Article 16, Communications Repeater Site Improvement. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant articles the sum of $78,792 for the purpose of making improvements to the town's public safety communication system. This sum to come from general taxation. Estimated tax impact is 3.6 cents per thousand and $3.59 per 100,000. Majority vote required and recommended by the board 5-0. Ms. Sermon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Ann Sermon, and basically the chief or the assistant chief can certainly speak to this, but the point behind it was essentially that the communications repeater would give the firefighters and police officers improved coverage in the Hampton Roads area of town. It improves their communication in buildings and will keep the emergency personnel safe. So if you have any questions, we have our fire personnel here. Thank you.
Any comments, questions? Seeing none, will go on as written. Sad part is, an hour ago we had 198 people. Now we're down to like 52. Highway truck replacement. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant articles the sum of $65,872 for the purpose of purchasing a replacement for the highway truck number 9, purchased in 2007. This vehicle is primarily used for light-duty hauling, landscaping, asphalt work, drainage, and catch basin maintenance. This sum to come from general taxation, tax estimated at 3 cents per thousand, $3 per 100,000. Majority vote required, recommended by the board 5-0. Anyone speaking or have any questions about this article? Seeing none, we'll go on as written. Article 18, to appropriate the capital reserve fund for sidewalks. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 to be added to the sidewalk repair replacement capital reserve fund previously established. This sum to come from general taxation. Tax impact is 2.7 cents per thousand to $2.73 per 100,000 valuation. Majority vote required, recommended by the select board 5-0. Is Arthur Belageron gone? Okay. Anybody else want to speak to this? Seeing none, we'll go on as written. Article 19, replace Parks and Recreation tractor with mini loader. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant articles the sum of $58,000 for the purpose of purchasing a replacement of the Parks Recreation Department 1999 tractor with a mini loader. This sum will come from general taxation. Tax impact, 2.6 cents per thousand to $2.64 per assessed 100,000. Majority vote required, recommended by the board 5-0. Any comments or questions on this article? It'll go as written. Article 20. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $50,000 to the conservation fund established pursuant to RSA 36-A:5. These funds will be used for purposes consistent with the conservation fund, including the purchase of interest in real property to be held for conservation purposes. This sum to come from general taxation. Tax impact is 2.3 cents per thousand, $2.28 per 100,000 assessed value. Majority vote required, recommended by the board 5-0. Ms. Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This fund was previously established in order to help with the Rains Farm property and grant matching. And we are, being the sustainable community that we are, this will help us continue to keep that kind of natural resource going forward and allow us, or give us the opportunity to match grants, possibly respond to offers or I see the word, I can't remember, easements on property that may be donated to us for some purpose. I think this is a good benefit to the town. We've slowly spent down the fund that we have right now, and this is going to give us an opportunity to grow it up in short terms so that eventually we can get to a place where we're comfortable perhaps taking the chance on buying a piece of property or joining with somebody else to do this such thing. So thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this? Article 20. Seeing none, we'll go on as written. Article 21, maintenance sedan replacement. To see if the town will raise and appropriate through special warrant article the sum of $24,000 for the purpose of replacing a 2008 Crown Victoria maintenance vehicle with a transit van. This sum to come from general taxation, 1.1 cent per thousand, $1.09 per 100,000 assessed value. 5-0 recommended by the board and majority vote required. Anybody looking to speak to this article? Seeing none, will go on as written. Article 22, to appropriate to sick leave trust fund. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the sick leave expendable trust fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Estimated tax impact none. No amounts to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required. Recommended by Select Board 5-0. Anybody wishing to speak to Article 22? Seeing none, will go on as written. Article 23, Snow and Ice Fund Appropriation. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Snow and Ice Deficit Non-Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Impact and taxes 0. Majority vote required. Recommended by the board 5-0. Anyone speaking to the Snow and Ice Fund appropriation? Epping Road Tax Increment Financing Plan. Shall the town adopt the provisions of Epping Road Tax Increment District Financing Plan Amendment dated January 7th, 2020, in accordance with RSA 162-K:9 IV 4, which allocates the use of tax increments for the retirement of bonds and notes as outlined in the planned amendment. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Select Board 5-0. Ms. Sermon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and I'll turn this over to Darren Wynnum, but I just wanted everyone to know that it was in 2015, the legislative body, the town meeting, did approve the tax increment finance district for Epping Road, which was a way to certainly increase, encourage development, et cetera. And it's taken us a few years to get to this point, and it was my privilege to serve as the select board rep to this committee this year and work with Darren Wynnum. So I'm going to have him get up here and talk about all the successes that we have enjoyed thanks to his relationship with a lot of the developers out there. So take it away, Darren.
Good afternoon, Darren Wynnum, Economic Development Director. So my colleague, Dave Sharple, says it's better to not say so much. So I'm more here to answer questions, if anybody has anything about this TIF. We obviously have been very successful. We've raised over $43 million of new and taxable investment. And so this is just a continuation. It doesn't increase in any way. We have $3.215 million left in borrowing authority. What this project seeks to do is to take $1 million of that and use it responsibly as we have to date. We're looking at doing a corridor study from the 101 interchange on Route 27 down to 111 Alpha, which is Brentwood Road, and then also we've allocated $100,000 for that study and $900,000 for whatever that study tells us what to do. We think from projects we already have that it's likely that we're going to have to put a center lane from Continental Drive going north to the 101 interchange, and also a sidewalk on the west side of Route 27 from Continental up to Cronin Road. So, any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And also we have Tom Monahan here if anybody has questions of him.
Go ahead, Mr. Cummings.
Okay, I was just waiting. I thought Mr. Dean had something to say.
No, he does, but...
I guess you answered one of the questions, Darren. I want to know what was the original amount of the bonding authority? Does anyone recall that? I want to say 6.8, is that?
6.8 million is what I'm being told. 6.8.
So of that 6.8, we have 3.21 left.
That was, it was 1.1 on top of that from the 2018 amended TIF. So of the entire thing, we have 3.215 million left.
7.9 then.
Don, we were talking about the figures here, just so everybody's clear. 6.845 was the initial TIF bonding authority, and 1.1 was added to that at a prior town meeting, so it is 7.945 with the 3.2 available.
So we got 3.2 left. So of the 7.9, we've paid down all our infrastructure that we put in to the tune of almost a little under 5 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So of all the original infrastructure that we had proposed in the original TIF back in 2015, has it all been done? I know there's water and sewer, there was the extension we call the TIF road, and the 1.1 I think was for the new traffic light.
Yes.
So is the TIF road extension, water and sewer been completed?
Okay. So the original 2015, thanks for asking that. So 2015, the plan was to do road, water, and sewer, from what is now Ray Farmstead Road. And this would go across to Watson Brook, across Watson Brook, and then up to Mr. Carlisle's 18 acres. So what we have, and that, and also running from Continental Drive up to Cronin Road, water, sewer. That's all been done, as has the Ray Farmstead Road up to just about where Watson Brook is. What hasn't been done is the crossing over Watson Brook and the road, water, and sewer up to Mr. Carlisle's parcels. Now, the original estimate for that portion of it, that is the crossing of Watson Brook, the road, water, and sewer up to Mr. Carlisle's property, was estimated at $1.3 million. Our DPW, our town engineer, did the work, and he estimates that number would now be $2 million. And that is why, if you look at this, this amendment we're proposing now, we would still have $2.215 million left in there. So if in fact there's a project that comes forward from Mr. Carlisle's lot, we could still then build that. We would do it next year, but we'd still have the money in the TIF to do so.
Thank you. Another question is, how much revenue of there's $43 million of incremental value in the tax base. How much tax revenue do we estimate that generates a year?
Per year, this past year, right now to date, we have, it's $2 million.
We should do a duet.
Oh, yeah, sure. You lead. So $2,058,830, which is, that's how much we've raised since. But just this past year, as you know, when the way taxes work, of course, that they put the stuff in, stuff starts coming, you don't really get the tax money until next year. So in 2016, we had made $82,000. 2017, $505,000. 2018, $550,000. And 2019, $920,542. And we have a whole bunch of projects that are happening right now, being built. Unitil buildings going up right now. The second building on Ray Farmstead's going up, and then Mr. Monahan has a project that will bring in a lot of money too. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
When the town adopted the TIF district in 2015, and I certainly, along with several other people, were a big proponent of this, was to really start creating and putting in the infrastructure required to attract development. But the development we were hoping to attract was commercial development. I'm a little concerned now, the mixed results is that a lot of the development we've put up there has been residential. It hasn't really driven the commercial development that we were hoping that it would. So the other aspect of it was, as soon as the TIF bonding was done, paid off, all this money would go back into the tax revenue, the general fund, to help pay down taxes. The longer we extend, if we keep extending the TIF, the longer it's going to take for that tax revenue to start helping out the rest of the tax rate in this town. And I think rather than increasing or in the TIF, we should be talking about how do we start eliminating it. I think we're going to be going in the wrong direction if we keep adding projects to the TIF beyond what we decide, the town determined in 2015. We'll never end the TIF district. It'll take us a long time for that tax revenue to now start being applied back to the general fund. And so for that reason, I'm not in favor of extending the TIF for that reason. I think it goes against the grain of what we told the townspeople, that we're going to put this infrastructure in, it's going to bring in commercial development, and when we get it paid off, all that beautiful new tax revenue is going to help the tax base and the tax rate. And the more we extend the TIF, the longer it's going to take us to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clement.
Yeah. So I do want to respond to that, but before I do, I see Mr. Monahan wants to speak. I don't think he's on the list, so I would think that he would probably have to take a vote for that.
Yes, we will.
I would make a motion to let Mr. Monahan speak.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Mr. Monahan, come on down.
Hi, my name is Tom Monahan. Along with my family, own probably 20-25% of the whole TIF district. And we've had the good fortune of moving forward with gourmet gift baskets, the building on 20 acres which we own. And we also have another some 50 acres out back. And we also own the King property of 65 acres and some stuff along the way. So it's about 135 acres of the project, of the whole TIF. But respectfully, Mr. Clement, who has always been a supporter of the TIF, the reason for the request is without this money being spent, there will be no more development on the site because the traffic studies indicate that. I just had a traffic study done for the King property, which was really more of a corridor study. And the town, rightfully so, respected a peer review. And the peer review came back and stated that this other work would have to be done before any development is done for the balance of the TIF. And that's a real revenue killer. Just the development that I have in the books right now would in the next, completed in the next 2 years or so, would bring forth about $1 million in tax revenue and some 40-something million dollars in assessed value. So this is the peer review study stated, which was done by Vanessa Hangen in Breslin, which was done for the town, was the same group that did came up with the dollar value in 2018. And frankly, the VHB was wrong on the numbers and wrong on the study. It's the same company that reviewed the study that I did this year that did the study, I guess, in 2018. So there will be little or no development and redevelopment, which is the great opportunity that I see on Epping Road coming into town as the gateway. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll go on the warrant. On the ballot, sorry. Okay, before I start the citizens petition article, I just would like to offer my congratulations and thanks to Ms. Herman and Ms. Corson for their time and effort that they've put in over the last 3 to 6 years for the town. And I, for one, appreciate the work that you've done. Thanks. Article 25, Citizens Petition Article, the Granite Bridge Project. By petition, shall the town express its opposition to the Granite Bridge Pipeline Project? The scope of this project vastly exceeds the current and future energy demands in New Hampshire. The likely changes in energy production could result in ratepayers paying for a technology that will be obsolete before it's operational. Public Utilities Commission contracted consultants reviewing the project have said the proposed plan is excessively costly and overbuilt and for the long-term needs of New Hampshire. As proposed by Liberty Utilities, the project includes a 27-mile frac gas pipeline along Route 101 from Manchester to Exeter, a metering station at the site of the Exeter water treatment plant, and the construction of a 2 billion cubic foot storage tank, larger than the Rainbow Tank in Boston, in the Epping Quarry. The pipeline would cross the Lamprey River twice and run along the Lake Massabesic, potentially threatening drinking water supply. The safety risk of the gas pipeline is evident in the recent leaks and explosion in Keene and Lawrence, Mass. Furthermore, this fossil fuel project with its methane emissions is in opposition to the principle of Exeter's right to a healthy climate ordinance passed in 2019 and the Select Board's vote to support the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. Upon passage of the vote is required, request that the Select Board send copies of this resolution with the record of the vote to Liberty Utilities, the Public Utilities Commission, the Site Evaluation Committee, and all state senators. Anyone to speak to this?
Jim Breeling, 7 Nelson Drive. The Liberty Utilities project was proposed in 2017, and many local citizens did not support the project and began a public opposition. Those of us who have been opposed from the beginning were concerned about 4 major issues. The first is the excessive cost to New Hampshire ratepayers, estimated over $414 million, and the concern that these would become stranded costs for technology that would become obsolete, a lot like other utility projects in New Hampshire, including Seabrook and Eversource. The second concern is that the safety of the pipelines, as pointed out by the warrant article. The third concern is the continued investment in fossil fuel infrastructure while diverting attention from investment in renewable energy. And lastly, the potential for pollution, both from methane and CO2 and other contaminants. Our concern was borne out by the response of interested parties to the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission in September. Their consultants indicated that purely on economic reasons and the large cost and the potential that these would become stranded costs, the project was deemed to be not doable. So we brought a citizens petition as supported, and I urge adoption by the town. However, in January, the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission took an action based on a request from Liberty Utilities to submit a revised plan. What's concerning about this revised plan request that the Public Utilities Commission agreed to in January, this was well after the citizens petition, they were going to consider this revised plan on a confidential basis. Hiding these details from the public view is a great tactic to thwart opposition, but the citizens of the town that brought this warrant article to the town will not be thwarted by this. Therefore, Mr. Moderator, regrets at this late hour, we wish to slightly amend the warrant article for a technical correction in paragraph 3, where it says, as proposed by Liberty Utilities, to amend the article to say, as of January 1st, 2020. And in addition, since this warrant article, the citizens petition was brought forth, the town's Energy Commission has also indicated their opposition to the Granite Bridge pipeline, largely on the basis of things that we mentioned here, as well as carbon dioxide emission. This amendment would change paragraph 5 to read, furthermore, this fossil fuel project with its methane and carbon dioxide emissions. So there's 2 slight technical revisions to the amendment to make sure that we're not overtaken by events that happened in January. And I have a written copy of the amendment.
I haven't even asked for, okay, we have an amendment to the article. First amendment is on paragraph 3, where it says, as proposed by Liberty Utilities, to add, as of January 1st, 2020, The project includes, et cetera, et cetera. That's Amendment 1. And Amendment 2 is for paragraph 5, where it says, furthermore, the fossil fuel project with its methane and adding in carbon dioxide emissions, and then continues on as is. Is there any discussion to these amendments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, they'll be added. I don't want to read the whole petition yet. Is there anybody else to speak to this petition?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for allowing me to speak in support of the Article 25.
Wait a minute, who are you, please?
I'm sorry, I'm Sherry Nixon at 17 Thornton Street.
Thank you.
Article 25 allows Exeter voters to go on record with their opposition to Liberty Utilities' proposed gas pipeline construction called Granite Bridge. The time to add fossil fuel infrastructure in our community and beyond has passed. Climate scientists have repeatedly warned that if fossil fuel use is not radically reduced in the next 10 years, we will face severe catastrophes as a result of the changing climate. Investing in the Granite Bridge pipeline is investing in outdated energy production. It is time to move beyond polluting, non-renewable energy resources such as fracked gas. It is time now to invest in renewable energy resources such as wind and solar energy and to promote energy conservation. There are many additional reasons to oppose the construction of the Granite Bridge pipeline, several of which have already been mentioned. The cost of $414 million, the tax will be passed on to taxpayers, or ratepayers rather. The unanimous opinion of hired consultants and the testimony of interveners against the approval of the project, and the production of energy beyond our current and future energy needs. But I have another reason that I'm in favor of this article, and it's opposing the construction of the pipeline, and that's because corporations, such as Liberty Utilities and their parent company, have a great deal of influence and control over the site plan of a liquefied natural gas pipeline and storage facility. Corporations are obligated to make decisions and to show results that favor their revenue and financial standing, and with the overall goal of achieving the best result for their shareholders. They have money, and that gives them the ability to lobby for their interests. Citizens directly impacted by this type of fossil fuel infrastructure have very little voice and no vote in the siting process. The most powerful, loudest voices, the corporations with an abundance of financial influence, dominate the discussions and decision-making. Citizens, the little guys, have little money or influence. Voting yes on Article 25 enables Exeter citizens to stand up to Liberty Utilities. It allows us to give voice to our concern about unnecessary fossil fuel infrastructure going through our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are many reasons to support this petition. Oh, I'm sorry, Eileen Flockhart, 7 Jacks Court. I'd like to just give you a pause for thought on one issue, that there's a potential for the location of a meetings station in Exeter. That location used to be a town nursery years back, and we'd love for it to be a tree nursery again, and that if this project gets eliminated, we have the potential to do that. And in keeping with the rights-based ordinance for a healthy climate, that seems like a win-win. So I would urge everybody to support the petition. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Robin Tyner, 9 Millstream Drive, Exeter. I serve on the Energy Committee and the Sustainability Committee, and I wanted to resemble, and you might have heard it if you tuned into a select board meeting, but it's something we prepared. I helped prepare for the Energy Committee on Granite Bridge and specific to this proposal, which we wholeheartedly oppose. We endorse opposing the Granite Bridge project. So as New Hampshire's energy needs increase in the future, the state must prepare to meet those needs. While the Granite Bridge project would clearly provide greater access to natural gas, sufficient alternatives exist that are more efficient, less destructive, less costly, and result in lower emissions. After much research and discussion, this is where we decided as the Energy Committee to oppose the Granite Bridge Pipeline project. And there's three main reasons why we did this. The first was lack of proven necessity. So there's a U.S. Energy Information Administration government agency, and they do profiles for every state. Per the profile specific to New Hampshire, roughly half of the gas consumed in New Hampshire is used to generate electricity, and New Hampshire is among the lowest 1/10 of states in per capita natural gas consumption. And partly this is because the state lacks natural gas infrastructure. Natural gas currently used for electrical generation can be diverted for other uses as renewables provide more of our electrical energy. Electrical energy infrastructure already exists statewide, and it can easily be upgraded to improve heating capacity and efficiency from cleaner, more efficient renewable sources using heat pumps and things like that. So the second reason, that's the first one was a lack of proven necessity. The second one is fiscal responsibility. A long-term economic view shows that pursuing natural gas infrastructure is more costly and less efficient over time than renewable options. So going after this infrastructure is really the wrong direction. If we had a graph, we can look at curves as the renewables prices continues to decrease. It gets to a point in a few years, I want to say it's in 5 or 10 years, somewhere in that range, where it's projected to go lower than natural gas. And the cost projections we're having for how efficient it is are not all taking into account the cost of building this whole thing. So energy for residential heating cannot be provided by natural gas with existing infrastructure. Energy companies find it difficult to expand natural gas usage due to the cost of new infrastructure in places like Northampton. Renewable energy is expected to become cheaper than natural gas with, I'm sorry, it's 10 to 15 years, so not the 5 to 10 I said, but still, Granite Bridge is a 40-year project, so this is less than halfway through its time. In New Hampshire, our mountains and coasts offer unrealized capacity for the expansion of wind energy. Investing in locally sourced energy is better for local economies. Per Liberty Energy, the $400+ million infrastructure proposal, which includes a 27-mile pipeline, a massive storage tank, and a metering station here in Exeter, would be paid for by New Hampshire ratepayers. Now, the third reason we oppose this is based on climate environmental concerns, and that's my background. I've been a professional oceanographer and meteorologist for 30 years, 28 and a half of those on active duty in the Navy, and I still serve on a variety of national boards and things like that. Renewable energy sources are cleaner than natural gas, require less infrastructure, are available now, have tremendous growth potential, and offer larger and nearer-term emission reductions. Although burning natural gas, which is mostly methane, produces less CO2 per unit of energy than coal, oil, or propane, it still produces CO2. It still releases, it's 2.75 kilograms of CO2 into the atmosphere. Methane itself is a potent greenhouse gas. It's 86 times more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide, or CO2. Gas wells leak methane into the atmosphere, and pipeline leaks are also frequent. There are no pipelines that don't leak somewhere. Small, they all leak at some point. The construction and maintenance, and you can Google that, but the construction and maintenance of pipeline networks has a negative environmental impact. The 27-mile pipeline would cross under multiple rivers and other sensitive areas. The 2018 and 2019 UN emission gaps reports, and what those are is United Nations, the IPCC comes out with the climate assessments and all of that. Every year, this emission gap report comes out and says, what is the gap between where we need to be if we're going to be on track to reduce emissions based on the Paris Accords, and where are we? What is that gap? And the gap keeps growing. So it notes that by 2030, emissions would need to be 25% and 55% lower in 2018 than in 2018 to put the world on the least cost pathway to limit global warming between 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees. So in summary, from economic, environmental, climate, and business case perspectives, it makes sense for New Hampshire to utilize existing electrical generation capacity, increasingly augmented by renewable resources, to supply energy for both heating and electricity. Thank you.
Mr. Moyer.
Herb Moyer, 51 West Side Drive, Exeter. I would just ask if Mr. Breland can expand upon what's the real impact of stranded costs?
So Jim Breeling, 7 Nelson Drive. So stranded interesting about public utilities all over is that the more capital infrastructure they build, the more the ratepayers allow them to charge the customers. And even if the infrastructure they're building becomes obsolete or is unnecessary, as in the case of Eversource, the ratepayers continue to pay the cost. In the example of Eversource, they built mercury scrubbers to a coal-fired gas plant that later was mothballed. And those ratepayers are still paying for the scrubbing of gas emissions from a coal-fired plant that no longer exists. And that's an example of stranded cost. And the economists that looked at the Granite Bridge pipeline concluded the same thing, that this is overbuilt for the foreseeable demand of the 40-year lifespan, and suggested that they wouldn't be allowing, didn't want to subject the ratepayers in New Hampshire to those costs.
Thank you.
We just had last month, December, a major 3-state meeting on offshore wind. Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts were all there. There were several hundred people there. Most public officials having anything to do with energy were there. And we finally got our governor, Sununu, after repeatedly browbeating him in the public press, to finally simply send a letter to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management asking for an offshore wind task force. We finally have that going. We are so far behind Maine and Massachusetts on offshore wind. A Department of Energy study, a U.S. Department of Energy study in 2010 indicated that there's enough offshore wind electric generating potential just off the New Hampshire coast to replace 4 Seabrook stations at 1,200 megawatts each. So the potential is amazing. It's a totally sort of new technology that will employ probably thousands of workers in the state once we get it up to speed. So new technology with all kinds of job opportunities and economic stimulation. That's the kind of energy-related facilities we need, not a fracked gas pipeline.
Thank you. Now, 2 amendments have been given. Do you want me to read the whole article? Does everybody know where the amendments are going? You want me to read? No, great. So the citizens petition on Article 25 will go as written with the amendments. Ms. Corson.
I'm going to come up here before everybody leaves and apologize for being not doing this at the beginning of the meeting, but every year we dedicate our town report to some deserving volunteer or citizen, and we this year are going to dedicate the report to the gentleman that asked the most questions at the deliberative session. which was convenient because we were going to dedicate it to him anyways. But Don Clement, the town report, will be named, dedicated to him this year because I think he has volunteered at least 20, 25 years for the town, starting as a volunteer for the Conservation Commission, and then was on the select board for 9 years, 6 more than I could ever do. And I just want to say that he still also is on an alternate on our Conservation Commission, and also member of the Exeter Budget Committee. He is dedicated and he gets into the weeds, and I'm always, it might take a little bit more time to listen and hear his questions, but I'm always very happy to hear his questions because there are always things that we don't think about. And so I appreciate Don, and we'll have to get a nice picture of you, Don, for the report. Okay?
Congratulations, Don. Article 26. By the petition shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,500 and no cents to defray the expense of the annual Exeter Holiday Parade for the public under the direction of the select people on a committee or a committee to be appointed to serve gratuitously for this purpose. Major vote required, majority vote required, recommended by the board 5-0. Anyone to speak in this?
Mr. Moderator, my name is Beth Dupel. I am the chair of the Holiday Parade Committee, but I am not a resident.
All right, we'll have, was she on the list, Russ? No. Looking for the Ms. Dupel to be, we got a second? All those in favor? Talk away.
Thank you. So the town currently, the parade committee receives $3,000 from the town for the parade. This annual event, the committee is hopeful that the town will be willing to fund what we consider the base components of running a parade. And from the committee's standpoint, that is 3 marching bands, one in the front, one in the middle, one at the end, porta potties for the participants, and a police detail. Base components. The last 2 years, that has cost us approximately $4,200. So that's why we're asking for an additional $1,500 to, again, fund the base components. Any other entertainment, additional parades, we usually have 5, and entertainment such as the Shriner Clowns, the Cycling Murrays, any of those other components, the committee would still be responsible for the fundraising for. So if the town would just do the base, anything we want to add to make it more flavorful, the committee is ready and willing to do.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Hi, Nancy Belanger, Mill Street in Exeter. I just want to speak in support of what Beth just said. I did volunteer with them 1 year, and I will tell you that that committee works really, really hard and does a lot of fundraising and things like that. So I hope people support this at the ballot in March. Thank you.
Okay, being none, we'll go, oh, one more.
Hi, Julie Gilman, 986 High Street. I just wanted to support this article because it has been, I don't know how many years since they've asked for additional money. So they've been operating under $3,000 for as long as I've been a select person, or before. since 2012, 7 years, thanks. And just as a side note, we established a committee for the Memorial Day Parade, and that is budgeted at $3,500 a year, and it's only, it's shorter. Doesn't have the same number of things, doesn't have the same number of volunteers, doesn't have the same number of groups that have to be paid because they need it for their own donations. So I would support this article so we can have the best holiday parade that we can get. Thank you.
Anyone else? And it'll be gone as written. Article 27, Citizens Petition Article, Resolution to take action on climate pollution. By petition, the New Hampshire resolution to take on action on climate petition, we, the town of Exeter, hereby call upon our state and federal elected representatives to enact carbon pricing legislation to protect New Hampshire from the cost of environmental risks of continued climate inaction. To protect the households, we support a carbon-free and divided approach that charges fossil fuel producers for their carbon pollution and rebates the money collected to all residents on an equal basis. Enacting a carbon cashback program decreases long-term fossil fuel dependence, aids in the economic transition for energy consumers, and keeps local energy dollars in New Hampshire's economy. Carbon cashback has been championed by U.S. economists January 17, 2019, in the Wall Street Journal, as the most effective and fair way to deliver rapid reductions in harm carbon emissions at the scale required for our safety. We expect our representatives to lead this critical moment for the health and well-being of our citizens and for the protection of New Hampshire's natural resources, which we all rely. The record of the vote approving this article has been transmitted by written notice to Exeter's state legislators, to the Governor of New Hampshire, to Exeter's congressional delegation, and to the President of the United States, informing them of the instructions from their constituents by Exeter's Select Board within 30 days of this vote. Anybody to speak on Article 27?
Hi, I'm Randy Talent. I live in 131 Court Street. Thank you to the Select Board and the Town Manager and the community for making Exeter a wonderful place to live. In 2007, the Governor of New Hampshire signed a climate change resolution following a vote of approval in 164 towns on a warrant article asking Congress to pass legislation that would, 1, reduce climate pollution, and 2, protect the economy. The 2007 New Hampshire Climate Change Resolution called for prompt, effective federal action. Congress failed to act. Our 2020 Carbon Cashback Coalition Town Warrant article begins where the 2007 effort left off. This time, we are explicitly detailing to our legislatures how to accomplish what the first resolution proposed. We are proposing implementation of the most efficient lever available to reduce climate pollution and in a way that protects and supports the economy. We understand that being good stewards of our economy requires being good stewards of our natural environment. We understand that change starts with us. We know that the decades-long failure of the energy market to account for the true costs of using fossil fuels is the root cause of the climate crisis. Carbon cashback is an efficient and fair solution to address the market failure while protecting the economy and family budgets. We support putting this approach to good use in New Hampshire, which will help promote legislation of a carbon fee and dividend at the federal level and provide a strong, effective model for other countries to follow. This is a grassroots effort to enable voters in Exeter and towns across New Hampshire to take a small step towards a giant leap forward to address the global problem of human-caused climate change. Through this proposed warrant article, the citizens of Exeter ask state and federally elected officials to put a fee on carbon and rebate the monies collected back to households. Why a warrant article? We have a climate emergency. There is no obligation of the town to make any changes or spend money. The same article is being proposed in at least 70 towns. The more towns that pass, the louder the message becomes. There are no more questions about the science. Economists have determined carbon fee and dividend reduces carbon pollution by 33% in 10 years, and it's the most effective in growing a green economy. To summarize, we have a climate emergency. We need to stop burning fossil fuels. We have solutions. Economists support carbon fee and dividend initiative, and we need legislatures to act decisively now. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Anyone else to speak in this?
Hi, I'm Jen Brackett-Piskovitz. I live at 22 Forest Street. And I'm here today asking Exeter voters to support Article 27 because it would show the commitment and action of the proclamation by the town of Exeter in July 2017 to uphold the principles of the Paris Climate Accord. We continue to witness the impacts storm surge and climate change are having here on the seacoast and beyond as we experience rising sea levels, increased storm activity, and poor air quality. We must work together to move the ball forward in support of bold climate initiatives. Exeter has an opportunity to join with over 70 New Hampshire towns looking to send an urgent message to state and federal legislators that carbon emissions no longer be free and they must act now. A carbon fee dividend approach has bipartisan support at the federal level. It would charge a fee to fossil fuel companies and industries for their emissions, which would help the U.S. drive down our carbon pollution. 100% of the net revenues would then be allocated to American households as a dividend administered by the U.S. Treasury. For more details on a carbon-free fee dividends approach, you can visit energyinnovationact.org or carboncashback.org. Conservation Hawks is a group of hunters and anglers working to defend America's sporting heritage who, quote, recognize the serious and potentially catastrophic threat we face from human-caused climate change. Because of the certitude of the science, Conservation Hawks supports every reasonable effort, including carbon fee and dividend legislation, to limit greenhouse gas emissions and protect our American way of life. Conservation Hawks considers human-caused climate change to be the #1 threat to our hunting and fishing, as well as to our children and to a prosperous American future. The Nature Conservancy says, quote, it's clear that we must address the substantial and growing threats posed by climate change. A bill like this, which makes a firm commitment to placing a price on pollution and reducing the emissions that threaten our communities, our health, and our planet, is a necessary component of any effective plan to address climate change. We're pleased to see bipartisan support of members of the House Climate Solutions Caucus continue to press this issue on Capitol Hill. We need durable bipartisan action on climate change, end quote. Our young people are pleading with us to stop passively hoping and start acting as if our house is on fire when it comes to our climate crisis. What is one thing you can do now? Vote yes on Article 27 in support of this resolution and take action on climate pollution. Thank you.
Robin Tyner, 9 Millstream Drive. I realized when I was up here on the other article, I mentioned the UN emissions gap reports, and I think I skipped over what it said that was sort of important over the last 2 years, and that was emphasizing the need for, they call it non-state action, which means below a federal level or below the country level, that the importance is more than ever important for towns and counties and communities to take actions, largely because we've kind of got a political mess at the, country-to-country level or global level. And so those reports urge the local action, which is kind of what this is. This is an example of a local action. The other thing is there's a forum that meets in DC once a quarter that I attend on behalf of 2 organizations. One, I'm on the board of directors, and one, I'm a senior fellow. And it's a conglomerate of nonprofits that may or may not be environmental or climate related. Some are health related. They're partisan, nonpartisan, just everything from taxpayers to common sense to the Sunrise Movement to environmental groups. But then there's also a lot of think tanks, conservative, liberal, everything in between. Probably have about 40 to 50 people there once a quarter meeting, and it's called the Carbon Pricing Dialogues. And most of what happens there becomes non-attribution, Chatham House rules, you can't say who said what, partly because there's a lot of players that maybe it's not politically correct for them to come say what they all know is true, but behind the scenes, a lot of people are working on it. And this type of solution is one that I can tell you that most of the people who attend those meetings support. Everyone there supports some sort of pricing carbon scheme, but this is a very popular one across parties, across nonprofits, and so I just think it's great that we have this coming up in so many communities.
Herb Moyer, West Side Drive. Just one last thing I'd like to say. When I started teaching ecology in high school, a concept was presented to me that I hadn't understood before, and that is the concept in economics of an externality. An externality is some effect that is visited upon others who are not, and it's not priced into the product, but which is part of the production of some product or activity. And I'll just read you very briefly. In economics, an externality is the cost or benefit that affects a third party who did not choose to incur that cost or benefit. Externalities often occur when the production or consumption of a product or service's private price equilibrium cannot reflect the true costs or benefits of that product or service for society. There are some positive externalities. As examples, public safety can be improved for all of us by something happening. Immunizations have a positive impact on public health. We have fewer examples of people spreading diseases around. A better educated public obviously has a positive impact on our society as a whole, but there are many large negative impacts as well. Obvious water pollution, air pollution, negative health impacts, pesticides that cause cancer, and cleaning up of waste disposal costs, etc. So this is simply an effort to price into the operation of fossil fuel generating facilities the cost to the rest of society that we get as a rebate. I hope everybody supports this. Thank you.
Anyone else? It'll be on the ballot as written. Article 28, Citizens Petition Article, New Hampshire Resolution for Fair Redistricting. By petition, to see if the town will urge the New Hampshire General Court, which is obligated to redraw the maps of political districts within the state following the 2020 census, will do so in a manner that ensures fair and effective representation of New Hampshire voters. That in order to fulfill the obligations, the New Hampshire General Court shall appoint an independent redistricting commission that draws the new district maps in a way that does not rely on partisan data, such as election results or party registration, or favor particular political parties or candidates. The record of the vote approving this article shall be transmitted by written notice from the selectmen to the town of Exeter state legislators and to the governor of New Hampshire, informing them of the instructions from their constituents within 30 days of the vote. Anyone to speak to this?
Hi, Kaylee Bryden, 50 Brookside Drive, Unit A4. I'm going to keep this brief. Thank you for staying this late today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you very briefly. I think this article really speaks for itself, but I'll just say a few words. The new voting maps get rewritten every 10 years, and this will be after this new census where this could happen. There has been some movement in the House. The latest bill was vetoed last August, and there is a new bill to make it happen again. And this article passing in Exeter will really send a message that we're really serious, that our vote is for our representative. The representatives are not choosing their voters, and that's really the bottom line.
Thank you.
Okay, then, I'm wearing my state representative hat, Julie Gilman, seat 318. I want to say that these articles that the select board gets that ask us to communicate and show the vote that came from these petitioned articles do actually go out. I've signed many of them. But what I wanted to say was, although we've made progress on some of these things, they've been strictly partisan. And if if all of the legislators can hear from as many people as we can get, that I think will have some influence. This year's changing, and I think that we can get some influence if you respond or RSVP or send your thoughts to all of the legislators in Senate. And you can find those email addresses on the website, the General Court website, gencourt.gov, I believe. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciate that you want to reach out to representatives, and I thank you very much.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
Mr. Moderator, can I be the closer? I just wanted to point out that this bill is currently in the hopper for this legislative session. It's sponsored by both Representative Marjorie Smith in Durham and our former Congressman, Senator Jeb Bradley. So it's sponsored by both a Democrat and a Republican. This is a bill that you should support no matter what your registration is, but especially if you're an undeclared or independent voter. Nonpartisan redistricting will introduce independent and undeclared voters into the redistricting process, and that is critical. You are the largest block of voters in this state. You should be represented in the drawing of districts, and I just want to repeat what Kaylee said. Voters should choose their representatives. Representatives should not be able to choose their voters. This bill that Representative Smith and Senator Bradley have sponsored, and that we need our governor to sign this time, not veto, will allow that to happen. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? Okay, we'll go on as written. Now, the last issue is we had 2 zoning articles at the front that we said we'd put in the back. Does anybody want to stay and discuss them? I didn't think so. Article 29, to transact any other business that may legally come before this meeting. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to close the meeting and adjourn.
Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Yeah, turn your cards back, Herb. Everybody else has already done it.